He weakly acknowledged that it had been a beautiful dream. Blood trickled from his lips as he lay defeated, admitting his desire to destroy that very dream. He had yearned to devour it, to raze it to the ground entirely. A bitter thought crossed his mind about how unfortunate it all was, regretting his actions hadn't led to a different outcome. The victorious blonde knight stood over him, observing the scene. The knight confirmed with finality that the villain was finally dead. It was a pathetic conclusion, one befitting the most wicked villain. The knight mused before turning away from the impaled figure. Transition. Elsewhere, the tapping of keys ceased. Nam Woo-hyun, a novelist, let out a weary sigh, rubbing his face. The death of the world's strongest villain signified the imminent end of his long-running series. He anticipated that the next chapter would likely conclude everything. Writing a story he had lost passion for felt like a miserable experience. Regardless, relief washed over him. He could finally call it quits after tomorrow. He leaned back, deciding it was time to leave his lingering regrets behind. Suddenly, a distinct knocking sound broke the silence. Woo-hyun jolted, wondering who could possibly be at his door at such a late hour. It seemed far too late for anyone to be knocking. He cautiously approached the door, asking who was there. The knocking abruptly stopped, leaving only silence. He paused, puzzled by the silence. Perhaps it was merely some drunkard mistaking his door. Annoyed by the disturbance, he decided to ignore it and head to bed. Just as he turned, a faint, leaf-shaped light fluttered down from the ceiling. He watched, bewildered, as the glowing paper drifted gently to the floor. Picking it up, he read the inscribed message. It was a gift, and he should ask when he was in need. He questioned what kind of gift it could be. Before he could ponder further, dark, ominous energy surged violently from the paper. From the swirling shadows emerged a figure instantly recognizable. Woo-hyun gasped, utterly shocked. The villain, Arsene Adele, whose death he had just written, smirked faintly, acknowledging that this was indeed how he died. Adele spoke of the immense time and effort he had poured into his quest. He recounted the 10 long years spent preparing for revenge against those who destroyed his family, mentioning the loss of kin, friends, and his lover, sacrifices made in vain. Despite everything, he confessed, he still failed. A truth he asserted Woo-hyun, his creator, understood better than anyone. Woo-hyun stammered, his mind reeling as Adele stepped closer, extending a hand. Adele seized him, and Woo-hyun cried out in sharp pain. Adele implored Woo-hyun to fulfill his failed ambition, declaring that he would witness it all as Woo-hyun's body began to distort and glitch violently, the scene dissolving into an abstract image resembling a spider's web. Transition. Woo-hyun found himself lying prone on a soft surface. His eyelids felt heavy as they slowly opened. Pushing himself up, he felt disoriented, wondering aloud if he had passed out. He looked around the unfamiliar, lavish room, his head swimming with confusion. His eyes fell upon his attire, formal vest, shirt, and trousers. He questioned what the hell these clothes were. Even his footwear felt strange. He stood, trying to make sense of the situation, demanding to know what was going on. His gaze landed on a tall, ornate mirror across the room. The reflection staring back featured striking crimson hair and a subtly slime mouth. The thin, slitted eyes, carefully hiding any trace of emotion, were unmistakable. He instinctively touched the strange, circular mark on his neck, a dry laugh escaping his lips. There was no doubt. He had somehow possessed the body of Arsene Adele, the most powerful and recently deceased villain from his own novel. A dreadful realization hit him. According to his own plot, it was only a few days before Arsene Adele's scheduled assassination. He quickly recalled Arsene's tragic backstory, the half-demon bloodline of the Arsene family. Once a great power, they were brought down by 6 rival families, leaving Arsene the sole survivor hell-bent on vengeance. This history shaped Arsene into a villain. His failed revenge attempt must have led him to bring Woo-hyun, his creator, into this world. The grim timeline pressed upon him. In mere days, the knights of the 6 families would come to kill him. He instinctively thought of the game-like systems he wrote, calling out for the status window. The blue screen appeared, detailing Adele's impressive half-demon race, chaotic alignment, and notable talents and traits including position transfer 1, darkness, killing intent, and mana manipulation, alongside a mana pool of 341. While Adele was talented, Woohyun knew he couldn't truly compare to the protagonists he deliberately overpowered. He had never intended for his attractive villain to actually defeat the main character. Then, a horrifying fact struck him. He was currently unable to control mana. The very backstory element meant to make Adele imposing now felt like a noose tightening around his own throat. He ran his hands through his newly acquired red hair in distress. His eyes caught a familiar glimmer on the bed. It was the paper, the one that appeared just before Adele dragged him here. He'd completely forgotten about it in the shock. Remembering the paper's message to ask when in need, he snatched it up, thinking that beggars can't be choosers, even if the help seemed dubious. He looked at the paper, confused. It was completely blank. Cursing his luck, he wondered if this was truly how his story would end, not with a bang, but a blank paper whimper. As despair crept in, glowing text began to form on the surface. It addressed him as creator, asking if he understood how to use the gift and requesting a simple yes or no response. Creator, the term, coupled with the situation, made him shiver. It had to be Adele somehow. He spat out a curse, but decided to play along, writing yes onto the paper with a nearby pen. New text appeared, explaining the information purchase function. The paper would answer any question written upon it. Some answers were free, others required a price, the cost scaling with the question's importance. His first, most pressing question was how to return his world. He wrote it down. The paper's reply was succinct. It is impossible. He clenched his fist, having half expected that answer anyway. Fine, if he was stuck here, he needed to survive. He wrote his next query, the detailed method to use mana and Adele's traits. He had to prioritize the urgent threats. The paper responded that this question required no payment. The knowledge of mana manipulation and trait usage was ready to be imprinted directly into his body, asking for confirmation. Yes or no. He quickly wrote yes. A warm, tingling sensation spread through him. He could feel the mana now, humming beneath his skin. Time to test these abilities. First, darkness, the trait to steal an opponent's senses. He focused, and a small vortex of swirling black energy formed in his palm. It was smaller than he'd envisioned in the novel, but it was a success and potentially handy. Next, he activated Killing Intent, focusing his aura to restrain opponents. A palpable pressure emanated from him, tinged with red energy. Success again. He figured it would work well against ordinary folks, though trained soldiers might resist it. Finally, the big one. Position Transfer 1. The ability to instantly swap places with a designated object, Adele's signature assassination skill. He noted his current range was only about 20 square yards, far less than Adele's peak power, but it was a start. Practice could surely improve it. He targeted a decorative suit of armor standing near the door. Designating the target, he activated the Move command. Reality seemed to warp for a split second before he found himself tumbling through the air, landing hard on the floor with a loud crash. Shit, he groaned, realizing mastering this wouldn't be instant. Talk about a major skill issue. Faintly, from outside, came the rhythmic sound of galloping horses. Pushing himself up from the floor, determination hardened his expression. He would practice dozens, even hundreds of times if necessary. He refused to die here. He would succeed, and he would survive. Meanwhile, the troop of knights drew nearer, their heavily armored leader urging them onward, shouting that they must ensure their target was killed this time. The imposing Arson family estate loomed under the dark, swirling sky. Heavy footsteps echoed within as armored figures marched determinedly. They stopped before two anxious servants. Their leader, Tion County Captain Feltz, demanded to know the whereabouts of their target. A servant nervously confirmed that Arson Adele was in the room ahead, wearing a faint, unreadable smirk. Feltz inquired about Adele's condition. The other servant reported that he hadn't moved in days, suggesting inactivity. Feltz merely grunted in response. The doors swung open, revealing Wu Hyun, now in Adele's body, facing Feltz and his contingent of knights. Wu Hyun, feigning Adele's demeanor, acknowledged Sir Feltz's presence and questioned if the captain truly intended to eliminate a mere young kid like him. Feltz dismissed the comment as absurd and curtly ordered his knights to eliminate him. They acknowledged the command and drew their swords. Wu Hyun reacted instantly, activating Position Transfer 1, designating one of the advancing knights. He focused his intent on the knight's sword as the target point. With a surge of mana, he initiated the move command. In a flash, Wu Hyun swapped places, appearing directly behind the targeted knight, driving Adele's dagger into his neck. Feltz and the other knights recoiled in surprise. Wu Hyun landed awkwardly, but quickly regained his footing. Enraged, Feltz furiously ordered his men to get him. The knights charged, swinging their blades. Wu Hyun dodged and weaved, using another position transfer to evade a potentially fatal blow, swapping with a piece of debris. He smirked, activating the move again, reappearing near the shattered window. He winced. The strain was considerable. He knew he had to reach the arson forest immediately. As Wu Hyun crashed through the window and sprinted away, Feltz bellowed for his men to chase the fleeing target. Wu Hyun plunged into the depths of the arson forest, running frantically, gasping for breath. Escaping the territory seemed impossible. Even if he evaded the knights, survival alone was unlikely. A different plan formed in his mind. He would find the gate hidden within this forest, the one leading to the demonic realm. He recalled that the realm was currently war-torn. But if he demonstrated sufficient talent, maybe, just maybe, they'd accept him, offering a sliver of hope. The immediate problem, however, was the knights closing in fast. Had they already caught up? Feltz's voice echoed nearby, ordering his men to spread out and find him. Wu Hyun cursed his own writing. He hadn't specified the exact location of the gate in the novel. He pushed onward, certain it had to be nearby. His foot snagged, sending him stumbling, and a wave of killing intent washed over him. A blast of energy erupted nearby, revealing his hiding spot. Feltz appeared, sword glowing, mocking Wu Hyun for being a slippery bastard. Wu Hyun scrambled away, realizing he only had mana for 1 or 2 more position transfers. He desperately needed to find that gate now. Doubt crept in. Maybe this was truly hopeless. As a last resort, he pulled out the magical paper, hastily scribbling a question, the exact location of the gate. The paper glowed, demanding a price, 100 gold coins or a relic rank artifact. He yelled in frustration. Why would he possibly have something like that right now? Just as he despaired, a knight lunged, striking him down. Feltz loomed over him, questioning if he ran merely to live. The captain declared that Arson Adele would die there today, like it or not. Wu Hyun coughed, blood trickling from his lips, weakly telling Feltz not to make him laugh. He wasn't going to die. Gripping the paper tightly, he knew there was still one last method. Whether he lived or died, he had to try it. Feltz noted his resistance, acknowledging him as the patriarch, however diminished. Wu Hyun retorted, questioning the dignity of grown men hunting down one kid, suggesting Feltz consider a career change to nanny, though mocking that Feltz would likely be terrible at that too. Enraged, Feltz declared he'd forego a painless death, deciding instead to pierce Adele's heart with the sword granted by Count Leon. He lunged, shouting for Adele to die. Now! Wu Hyun screamed, pressing the paper against his chest. The paper flared with brilliant light. Text appeared, thanking him for the payment and revealing the gate's location, guiding him towards it. Feltz faltered, confused by the sudden flash. A fierce burst of light erupted from the paper, pushing Feltz back. A swirling, fiery portal materialized nearby. With his last position transfer, Wu Hyun swapped places with a distant tree branch, appearing right before the gate. Feltz roared, "Stop!" Wu Hyun stumbled forward, incredulous that the monstrous captain had followed him even through that blast. He spotted the gate, relief washing over him. "Found it," he muttered, Feltz charged, vowing not to let him go. Wu Hyun threw himself towards the portal, glancing back one last time. He smirked, bidding Sir Feltz farewell for now, disappearing into the swirling vortex just as Feltz's attack hit empty air. Feltz cursed, realizing his prey had escaped into the demonic realm itself. Wu Hyun found himself in a dimly lit, cavernous space of stone pillars. Chewing on some jerky he'd inexplicably found, he wondered how long he'd been unconscious. After passing through the gate, he had awakened inside what he identified as a man-made dungeon, the secret demonic arts place. The presence of jerky and a simple stone bed struck him as odd. Perhaps they were provisions left by someone guarding treasure. His attention was drawn to a shimmering blue barrier ahead, designed to deflect blades, and a massive, imposing stone guardian standing sentinel before it. He couldn't guess which high-ranking family constructed this bizarre place. The guardian alone looked terrifying, and he knew attacking it directly would be suicidal. Just then, the magical paper he carried floated into view, emitting a soft glow. Text materialized upon it, informing him that he was receiving a one-time penalty for offering his life force, an object not technically in his possession, as payment earlier. Future attempts to offer invalid payment would result in the information exchange failing. Wu Hyun inwardly cursed the papers, or Adele's, sheer audacity, but felt a sliver of relief at being let off with just a warning this time. His gaze shifted, falling upon a section of the stone wall that seemed unusual. Reaching out, he felt a strange resonance, a sensation perceptible thanks to Adele's heightened senses. However, a mental block immediately followed, accompanied by the distinct impression, "You don't have the right." He surmised it was a mechanism to deactivate the barrier, useless to him without the proper authority. What a shame. He needed another way past. Spotting a loose chunk of rock on the ground, likely fallen from the guardian, gave him an idea. If it was just stone, maybe things could go his way. Focusing, he designated the fallen stone with Position Transfer 1 and activated the move. It worked. He instantly swapped places with the stone, finding himself past the barrier, standing directly before the towering guardian. The guardian let out a low growl, its stony form shifting as it registered his presence. Transition. Far away, beneath a sky dominated by a solar eclipse, stood a grand, Gothic castle. Inside its halls, a servant clumsily spilled a bucket, earning a sharp reprimand from another. Their squabble was cut short by the imposing presence of a figure watching from a balcony above. This was Crete, patriarch of the esteemed Iber's family in the demonic realm. He mused aloud that the household was bustling, likely because his daughter was preparing to raid the mid-level hidden domain soon. He acknowledged the situation was tricky. Success would grant her entry into Saitan, the demonic realm's elite academy, but he knew she wouldn't obey if he ordered her to fail. Her fierce determination stemmed from a desire for revenge against the humans who had killed her mother, a goal she believed only achievable through Saitan. Crete sighed, expressing concern over whether his seemingly frail daughter could survive in such a cutthroat environment. His thoughts were interrupted by a maid bursting in, announcing trouble. Crete turned, annoyed by the fuss, demanding an explanation. The maid apologized hastily, reporting that an unidentified individual was currently inside the hidden domain. Crete inquired further. The maid elaborated that there was no sign of the door being used for entry, baffling everyone. When asked about the intruder's identity, she could only report that someone had activated a function usable only from within, but their identity remained unknown. Crete tapped his desk thoughtfully, speculating that the intruder might have been forcibly summoned through a lingering gate from the human-demon war. He ultimately dismissed the concern, telling the maid the intruder would likely perish anyway, and instructing her to focus staff efforts on preparing for his daughter's exam. She bowed and left. Crete gazed out the window, pondering that if this intruder somehow survived, they might become a useful pawn. Transition. Back in the dungeon, Wu Hyun was suddenly flung backward by immense force. He landed hard, gasping that it was the Wolf Guardian and he'd almost died. He sat up, realizing that even with the barrier bypassed, the Guardian remained a significant threat. Then it struck him. The Guardian was made of stone. Nice, he grinned, deciding to try his skill again. Let's see if this rock doggo likes being teleported. He designated the stone wolf with position transfer 1. It worked. Relief washed over him. He initiated the swap. The wolf's head briefly showed confusion as it materialized back inside the barrier's confines. Wu Hyun smirked, knowing it would likely destroy itself trying to break through the barrier it now couldn't bypass. With the wolf dealt with, he turned, scanning the area, needing only to find the exit now. His search was cut short as a new guardian descended, a large, winged crystalline creature with glowing red eyes. It seemed there was a mission, or perhaps a boss, for each stage. Swallowing hard, Wu Hyun judged this new opponent looked considerably more dangerous than the wolf. He quickly tested position transfer on it, confirming it was inanimate, just like the wolf. This meant swapping was still possible within the confines of this trap area. He began a rapid series of position transfers, blinking around the room, until he reached a large, shimmering gateway at the far end. A disembodied voice echoed, welcoming him for reaching the end. Wu Hyun found the welcome strange, questioning why an intruder would be greeted so formally. It felt like a boss room. Perhaps someone waited within. From the shimmering portal emerged a massive, armored figure radiating dark energy, wielding a colossal sword, a Death Knight. Assessing its aura, Wu Hyun felt its power was comparable to Captain Felt's. The Death Knight expressed respect for his accomplishment, but Wu Hyun activated its own position transfer to switch his position with the Death Knight. Before he could react, Wu Hyun landed beside a large, ornate chest, the treasure box. It was bigger than he'd anticipated, detailed with metal studs and featuring an intricate black dragon engraving. Wait, a black dragon? Where had he seen that symbol before? The memory surfaced. The highest-ranked demon families, the 7 deadly sins, sloth, lust, gluttony, wrath, envy, greed, and the 7th, pride, represented by the Aber's family and their black dragon symbol. Shit, this dungeon belonged to the Aber's. If this Death Knight, likely their guardian, caught him, he was utterly finished. Thinking fast, he decided to grab whatever was inside the chest and run. There had to be something useful for escape. As he thrust his hand into the chest, a viscous, dark purple substance erupted, latching onto his face and forcing its way into his mouth. He choked, clawing uselessly at the suffocating mass. He collapsed, retching violently as the substance invaded his senses. An unbearable agony exploded within his skull. He screamed, his vision blurring, just before blood erupted from his eyes and mouth, and darkness claimed him. Gasping breaths echoed in the darkness as Wu Hyun lay sprawled on the cold stone floor. He slowly pushed himself up, disoriented, wondering how much time had passed, and morbidly checking if his left eye had actually popped out during the ordeal. Touching his face, he felt dried blood, but his eye was intact, though it now bore an unsettling black sclera and vibrant purple iris. Could that bizarre liquid have been the legendary Eye of Superbia? He quickly checked his status window, confirming the addition of the new trait. The description detailed its power, an extreme boost to dynamic eyesight that activated upon killing an enemy. A predatory grin spread across Wu Hyun's face. With this, taking down groups weaker than him would be trivial. Maybe coming to the demonic realm wasn't such a bad choice after all, he mused. Having acquired the unexpected power-up, he decided it was time to leave. His gaze fell upon the large, ornate doors behind the now empty treasure chest. He realized the commotion he'd caused likely meant a welcoming party waited just outside. Stepping out meant almost certain death. He briefly considered if he needed to master the art of kneeling faster than light to survive. First things first, the incriminating arson family insignia on his neck had to go. If they identified him, begging wouldn't save him. He focused, cloaking the mark with dark energy. Just then, the Death Knight outside began pounding furiously on the doors, demanding they be opened immediately. Wu Hyun flinched at the noise. The guardian roared again, announcing that Her Highness was approaching and demanding quick entry. Her Highness? The mention of royalty, coupled with the earlier provisions, sparked a realization. This wasn't just some random dungeon. It was a testing domain created by one of the high-ranking families, likely the Abers, given the black dragon motif. He urgently needed to know who owned this place. Having stolen the intended reward, the Eye of Superbia, meant the rightful owner would want his head on a platter. He pulled out the magic paper, needing information fast. He quickly scribbled his query. Who was the closest character to him right now? The paper, ever the opportunist, glowed, demanding the usual price, 100 gold or a relic rank artifact. He cursed inwardly. What could he possibly pay with now? Thinking desperately, he offered the only currency he had, 100 points of his maximum mana. It would weaken him significantly, but survival came first. Mana could be recovered later. Mana flowed from him into the paper, which deemed the offering satisfactory. The paper revealed the answer as ethereal footsteps approached the door. The closest figure was Renee, the youngest daughter of Crete Bears, patriarch of the Bears family. Shit, Wu Hyun muttered, feeling his life expectancy plummet. It all clicked. This domain was Renee's final training ground, and the Eye of Superbia was her prize. He knew Renee, possessing significant authority, would likely carve through the remaining guardians effortlessly before confronting him, the thief. Indeed, sounds of battle outside ceased abruptly. Steeling himself, Wu Hyun decided he had to face her directly. He stood composed as Renee Iber stepped through, her piercing blue eyes locking onto him as she demanded to know who he was. Without hesitation, Wu Hyun dropped smoothly to one knee, offering congratulations to Miss Renee for clearing the domain and declaring her finally worthy. Renee, unimpressed, radiated a dangerous aura and commanded him to explain himself. Thinking quickly, Wu Hyun spun a lie, claiming the patriarch himself had ordered him here to act as her guard. He noted with relief that although their eyes met, she showed no sign of recognizing the Eye of Superbia he now possessed. Renee eyed him skeptically, clearly questioning his presence. He maintained his respectful demeanor, adding that despite appearances, he was quite skilled, already planning how to leverage this encounter for his escape. Renee let out a dismissive puff, still looking unconvinced. To demonstrate, Wu Hyun used his teleportation spell to switch places with her sword. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise. Seizing the moment, he swiftly grasped her arm, asking if his skill was adequate, reiterating his belief that he would be useful in protecting her. Renee snatched her arm back, her expression darkening. Wu Hyun momentarily panicked, wondering if he'd angered her. However, she just crossed her arms with a huff, seemingly choosing to overlook his forwardness for now. She instructed him to head out, adding that the patriarch was waiting and he should proceed there directly. Wu Hyun readily agreed. Playing his fabricated role, he bowed slightly, stating he would then be on his way to handle other tasks entrusted by the patriarch, eager to get away as soon as possible. As they exited the dungeon, Renee paused, observing him curiously for a moment. Emerging from the domain's entrance, they were met by the sight of Patriarch Crete himself, flanked by guards. Renee addressed him uncertainly as father. Crete's calculating gaze swept over Renee before landing squarely on Wu Hyun with unnerving interest. Wu Hyun froze, shocked. Father, why the hell was the patriarch here waiting right outside? Talk about bad luck. He tensed, expecting immediate retribution for stealing the eye, yet Crete remained impassive, showing no outward reaction. Crete simply asked Renee if she had successfully cleared the domain. She confirmed with a quiet yes. Crete nodded curtly, instructing her to follow him. Wu Hyun trailed behind, completely bewildered by the patriarch's inscrutable plans. He followed the procession, his mind racing. Escape seemed impossible now, surrounded by guards, and he had nothing left to offer the paper for help. They soon arrived at the magnificent, imposing Bears Mansion. Inside a grand hall, Crete stopped, dismissing Renee and the guards back to their quarters. He then turned to Wu Hyun, telling him to wait there. He would be called for later. Left alone, Woo-hyun briefly wondered if this was a chance to slip away, but instantly discarded the idea as shadowy figures stirred subtly in the corners of the room. He was being watched. Of course he was. Meanwhile, inside Crete's private study, Renee stood before her father's desk. Crete confirmed she had completed his final task. He then addressed the unspoken tension, asking if she truly felt she must enter the Seitan training facility. Renee met his gaze, her resolve firm as she answered affirmatively. Crete leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. Setting aside their disagreement for now, he inquired about the intruder, him. Renee recalled her encounter with Woo-hyun. After a pause, she offered her assessment. The intruder was strong. Crete stroked his chin, a faint smile playing on his lips. How intriguing, he thought. He then informed Renee that having proven herself worthy, she could proceed to Seitan as she wished. Renee's face lit up with pure joy as she thanked him profusely. As his daughter departed, Crete mused over the situation. He had expected the intruder to die immediately, surviving, claiming the eye, and earning Renee's acknowledgement of his strength. This unexpected variable, this Woo-hyun, was definitely worth using. Outside the study, Woo-hyun shifted anxiously, wondering just how long he would be kept waiting. The bear's mansion stood imposing against the twilight sky. Inside, Woo-hyun followed a servant down a long, candlelit corridor. The servant announced his arrival before creaking doors revealed the patriarch's study. Crete Bear sat enthroned behind a massive desk, observing Woo-hyun's entrance. The patriarch's intense yellow eyes seemed to pierce right through him. Woo-hyun felt a bead of sweat, nervously wondering what Crete was plotting. He decided to be direct, asking the patriarch why he had been allowed to live. A chilling smirk spread across Crete's face, tendrils of dark purple energy swirling around him as he identified Woo-hyun as the bastard who had thoroughly fooled his daughter. An immense pressure suddenly slammed into Woo-hyun, forcing a grunt from his lips. He staggered under the weight of Crete's overwhelming demonic aura, collapsing to his knees. A realization struck him through the suffocating force. Crete didn't actually intend to kill him. Crete hummed, withdrawing the crushing pressure slightly. Woo-hyun gasped for air, overwhelmed by the sheer power radiating from the demon lord. Crete acknowledged Woo-hyun's quick wit before demanding his name. Staying in character, Woo-hyun knelt fully, stating his name was Adele. Crete repeated the name, Adele, as his hand, wreathed in shadows, reached out. Dark energy shot forward, enveloping Woo-hyun and violently yanking him towards a desk. Pinned helplessly, Woo-hyun struggled, demanding to know what Crete wanted. Crete ordered him to open his mouth, and a small, sinister tendril of darkness slithered towards him. The patriarch explained that Woo-hyun simply needed to continue the charade he performed for Renee, implying this tendril ensured compliance. Woo-hyun choked as it forced its way in. Crete added a chilling warning. Stray thoughts would activate the poison, ripping his heart apart. He then declared he would prepare lodging for Woo-hyun, telling him to wait until summoned, leaving Woo-hyun writhing on the floor. With a final command to leave, Crete dismissed him. Woo-hyun stumbled out, clutching his throat, utterly bewildered by the manipulative demon lord's actions. He was led to a modest, detached house on the estate grounds. The servant informed him this would be his residence from now on. Woo-hyun numbly accepted that he was now officially a dependent, practically a pet, of the bear's household, thanks to Crete's whim. The servant bid him rest comfortably. Alone, Woo-hyun felt a strange mix of immense gratitude for surviving and the distinct, unpleasant sensation of being completely used. He sat on the simple bed. Perhaps being partially acknowledged by Crete could be turned to his advantage. But first, the priority was the parasitic creature now residing in his throat. He focused his mana, needing to get rid of the disgusting thing. It had to work. Concentrating, he carefully extracted the small, worm-like creature, which glowed faintly. Relief washed over him. It had worked. As he suspected, the creature was inanimate, allowing manipulation. The thought of failure was nauseating. Killing it seemed risky, as Crete would likely notice immediately. What should he do? The creature began to stir in his palm. He realized it was waking because its mana source had been severed. Thinking quickly, he channeled a small amount of dark energy into it, urging it to eat. Appeasing it seemed the only option. He coaxed the now sated creature, telling it to hurry back to sleep. With the immediate threat neutralized, Woo-hyun collapsed onto the bed, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. He wondered how much of Crete's control mechanism he had truly eliminated. Exhaustion threatened to pull him under. He felt like he was going to pass out. Before succumbing, he instinctively checked his status window. His mana was down to 241, a hefty price for the earlier information, but his position transfer talent had leveled up to 2. Progress, but his mana pool remained pitifully small compared to the protagonists he'd written. How could he increase it? What could he even do? Then a method came to mind. Oh yeah, there was that method. 3 days later, Renee bluntly told Woo-hyun she didn't like it, referring to their current situation. Woo-hyun feigned polite confusion, reflecting that this was typical of his time assigned as her guard. She always maintained a cold distance. He recalled the backstory he'd written for her. A once bright personality extinguished by the trauma of losing her mother to humans. As her creator, he felt a pang of sympathy. Their quiet walk was interrupted by a servant shouting for Adele and Renee. The servant relayed that the patriarch summoned them both. Woo-hyun immediately guessed the summons concerned Renee's entry into Saidan. She had hoped clearing the domain would grant her passage, but Crete had initially denied it. In the study, Crete reiterated his stance, stating Saidan was no place for her. With her current abilities, she would likely die before achieving her revenge. Woo-hyun felt distinctly awkward, like watching a particularly cringy family reality show episode. However, Crete then offered a condition. He would permit Renee's entrance, but only if she took Adele as her guard. Renee refused instantly and emphatically. Woo-hyun's sweat dropped. Did she really hate him that much? Woo-hyun knew Saitan well. The elite demonic school, a cauldron of promising but ruthless children, constantly clashing with the imperial school where his protagonist resided. It was a place where many students, including Renee in his original plot, met grisly ends. A ticking time bomb. He couldn't fathom why she was so desperate to go. Yet for him, Saitan represented opportunity. It could be the perfect place to gather allies and leverage his knowledge of future events. Seeing his chance, Woo-hyun spoke up, deciding to try his luck. He stated he had a request for the patriarch. Crete regarded him impassively. Woo-hyun swallowed, figuring if he was being dragged into this mess anyway, he might as well get something out of it. He requested something related to mana. Crete smirked, remarking he'd expected Woo-hyun to ask for the poison worm's removal instead. Woo-hyun inwardly noted Crete's ignorance regarding the worm's current, pacified state, silently cursing the arrogant demon lord. Crete deemed the mana request acceptable, calling Woo-hyun an arrogant bastard, but agreeing to hear him out since it wasn't difficult. He dismissed Renee, who left with a silent bow. Woo-hyun briefly wondered again at her apparent dislike for him. Alone with Crete, he mentally listed potential rewards. A mana elixir or a powerful artifact would be nice. Crete explained he'd sent Renee away because the gift was a sensitive family treasure. He acknowledged Woo-hyun's pitifully low mana, stating that since Woo-hyun would likely die protecting Renee anyway, this boon was the least he could offer. Gesturing Woo-hyun closer, Crete gathered crackling purple energy in his palm, announcing he would transfer the bear's family's sacred mana cultivation technique. Woo-hyun stared, utterly shocked. The legendary mana technique itself? Woo-hyun felt an intense surge of purple energy flow into him as Crete chanted an ancient invocation, calling upon a demon god to grant clarity amid chaos and bestow rightful trials. The sheer power of the chant washed over him, leaving him breathless. Crete observed, noting that a normal person's sanity would shatter from the mere chant, remarking that Woo-hyun was indeed an interesting specimen. The patriarch explained that through this cultivation technique, mana would be bestowed directly by the demon god, enabling Woo-hyun to achieve his desires. Wu Hyun processed this, startled by the direct involvement of a demon god. Crete casually added a remark about Wu Hyun's family seemingly being related to the 7 deadly sins, much to Wu Hyun's confusion, before asking if he was perhaps mistaken. Crete then smirked, reminding Wu Hyun that the worm poison ensured his loyalty, regardless of any potential spy status. Wu Hyun was baffled. He had no recollection of writing any connection between the Adele family and the 7 deadly sins into his novel. Crete abruptly dismissed him, and Wu Hyun left the study, taking his leave. Seeking seclusion, Wu Hyun found a quiet spot in the forest surrounding the bear's estate. He decided this was the best place to practice the newly acquired technique, minimizing the risk should his mana run wild. Dark energy began to seep from him as he prepared. He initiated the chant, calling upon the demon god. He understood that accepting this demonic energy meant forsaking the ability to use human mana forever. But trapped in this world, he felt he had no other choice. As the ritual progressed, a colossal, shadowy presence manifested before him, its piercing red eyes fixing on Wu Hyun. The entity identified him contemptuously as a mongrel. Wu Hyun recoiled, stunned. The presence clarified it didn't sense the blood of that child, presumably Renee, but rather the lineage of a filthy traitor. Wu Hyun stammered, asking if this overwhelming entity was the demon god. The being confirmed its identity, known in this world as the god of pride. Wu Hyun cautiously asked if the god planned to kill him. The god of pride stated that if that were its intention, Wu Hyun would have died instantly. For some inexplicable reason, it felt no desire to kill him. It elaborated, sensing a shared sin within Wu Hyun, a strange kinship. Declaring Wu Hyun walked the same path, the god decided to bestow upon him a mark. Power surged, branding a symbol onto Wu Hyun's wrist, a mark signifying the right to wield the god of pride's power. The god issued a final warning to the arrogant traitor not to lose composure to pride. Wu Hyun felt the residual power, realizing he had borrowed the might of a demon god. He wryly thought the mark might grant him a few extra lives, like finding a rare cheat code. He also noted it manifested as a tattoo. At this rate, his entire body would be covered soon. Suddenly, he sensed someone nearby. Renee emerged from behind a tree, staring wide-eyed. Wu Hyun panicked, wondering why she was there, and if she had overheard his divine tete-a-tete. Renee murmured, "Dark Priest?" Wu Hyun could only manage a confused what. A month passed. Wu Hyun checked his status. Thanks to the cultivation technique and the mark, his mana had skyrocketed from 241 to 1035. He attributed the rapid growth, which had tripled his mana, largely to his interest and focus traits accelerating the learning process. He estimated that within a couple of years, he might surpass the heirs of the 6 human houses. In his current state, he felt confident he could even conquer that hidden domain he'd barely survived. His thoughts were interrupted by the sight of Renee, training vigorously nearby. He internally questioned her choice of location, right outside his temporary home instead of the official training grounds. He called out, asking if she needed assistance. She stopped, acknowledging him with a grunt. He noted with amusement that she no longer avoided him completely, though she seemed thoroughly convinced he was some kind of priest. It made sense, he supposed, as dark priests were the only ones known to communicate with demon gods. Honestly, it was probably better she hadn't heard his actual conversation with the god. However, her treating him like a superior could cause awkward rumors within the family. He addressed her formally as Miss. Startled, she responded affirmatively. He explained that while he understood her thoughts, he requested she treat him in the same casual manner she used to. Renee hesitated. He reminded her he was merely following orders to protect her and urged her to treat him comfortably. Thinking for a moment, Renee's demeanor shifted instantly. She propped a hand on her shoulder and ordered him to bring her some water. Wu Hyun blinked, taken aback. She pointed out he had told her to treat him comfortably, and she was tired and thirsty after training. She then performed an impressive high kick stretch, embodying the prideful attitude typical of her family. Wu Hyun marveled at the rapid change. Resigned, he agreed, figuring he had to do whatever she asked for now. He returned with refreshments, finding her resting on a tree stump. He needed to get back to the domain, but Renee wasn't leaving him alone. Time was short. He had to act before the main character from his novel crossed over. That treasure chest held items crucial for surviving Saidan. He addressed Renee again, asking how her Saidan enrollment preparations were going. She eyed him suspiciously, but stated she'd packed everything, mentioning the vicious human she expected to face there as his reason for asking. He feigned concern, asking if she was sure and suggesting she double-check her belongings back at the mansion. He insisted he didn't want her troubled later if she forgot something important. Renee saw through the act, demanding he get to the point. He maintained his facade, claiming worry as her escort. She flatly called him a liar, asking where he was trying to go behind her back. Damn, she wasn't falling for it. She pressed further, her aura flaring slightly, asking if he was sick of her. Woo Hyun cursed inwardly. Thinking fast, he fabricated another excuse, claiming he'd heard about a domain nearby and planned to conquer it for her safety. He pleaded for her understanding. Renee suddenly brightened, saying she now remembered what she had forgotten. Before Woo Hyun could suggest she go back, she declared she was warming up. She drew her dagger slightly, explaining she hadn't warmed up yet, and announced she was going with him to the domain. Assuming it was nearby, they could finish within the day, right? She urged him to hurry up. Woo Hyun could only sigh in defeat. They arrived shortly after at a location radiating ominous energy, a graveyard dominated by a decrepit church. Woo Hyun recognized it instantly with dread, the domain of the undying. Renee recognized the ominous place, identifying it as a former necromancer stronghold, now haunted by wraithified soldiers left from the human-demon war. The domain's reputation was enough to visibly unsettle her. Woo Hyun guessed it ranked as at least a middle-upper-level threat. He mused that the number of undead soldiers would likely have increased significantly over time. Having Renee's help wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The primary issue, however, was that traveling together would make escaping the bear's mansion even harder, as news would inevitably reach Crete almost instantly. Woo Hyun feigned concern, suggesting she shouldn't come if it was a burden, hinting at the potential trouble if the patriarch discovered her unauthorized departure. Renee brushed off his concern, stating it was okay. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she revealed she knew a secret exit. Leading him along the estate wall, she stopped before a small, cleverly concealed archway nearly hidden by foliage. Woo Hyun remarked on her apparent familiarity with the hidden paths. Renee simply crossed her arms, her silence confirming his suspicion that she must sneak out quite often. Sneaky princess, he thought. She urged him to hurry before they got caught, placing the picnic basket aside. He agreed, grabbing the basket. They slipped through the exit and began their trek through the misty, mountainous landscape outside the bear's territory. After some travel, Woo Hyun inquired how much farther they had to go. Renee glanced back, momentarily confused, before Woo Hyun quickly covered, claiming he hadn't had reason to leave the premises before and was thus unfamiliar with the surroundings. Whoops! She pointed towards a distant, fog-shrouded peak, confirming they were almost there, needing only to cross that ridge. Woo Hyun nervously agreed. They continued, the path becoming steeper and rockier. A dislodged stone clattered nearby. Renee finally announced their arrival. Before them lay the desolate ruins of the domain of the undying, shrouded in an eerie mist. Renee muttered a curse under her breath, calling the place a damned son of a Cerberus, which Woo Hyun mentally translated to the more common, less mythical insult. He reminded himself to hide his arson bloodline connection at all costs. Recalling details from his novel, Woo Hyun pointed toward a specific area near the largest collapsed rock statue, stating he knew the way in. They could likely dig there. Sure enough, beneath the rubble lay a circular stone structure marked with runes. The entrance, guarded by soldiers with rotting flesh, according to his lore. He offered to take the lead, but Renee insisted on going first. She lit a torch, illuminating the descending stairs. Woo Hyun noted the passage was brighter than expected. Renee pointed deeper into the cavern, confirming they were in the right place. The scale of the undead presence was far greater than the bear's training domain. Woohyun estimated at least 100 fresh graves littered the vast cavern. Renee declared they should proceed, and Woohyun readied his dagger. Almost immediately, skeletal hands erupted from the ground, followed by hordes of glowing-eyed undead soldiers lumbering towards them. They were quickly surrounded. Woohyun strategically told Renee he'd leave the initial wave to her, affirming her capability. Renee drew her sword, blue energy enveloping the blade, and launched herself into the fray, cutting down skeletons with swift, powerful strikes. Watching her fight, Woohyun felt confident tagging along was the right call. He knew a necromancer caster had to be controlling the swarm, likely positioned near the back. Declaring he'd catch up, Woohyun dashed past the main fight. Behind him, shattered bones began reforming, and the defeated skeletons rose again. Renee cried out in surprise, questioning how they revived. From the shadows emerged a powerful lich, its eyes burning with malevolent red light, declaring their intrusion fearless. It commanded its minions, still regenerating, to eliminate the intruders. Renee realized the caster was the source of the endless resurrection. Woohyun yelled for her not to stop, urging her to keep advancing towards the caster. He parried a blow from a nearby skeleton, swiftly dispatching it, and shouted that he had an easy way to clear this, spotting his chance. Renee, understanding, leaped high into the air, directly towards the lich. The lich, holding a pulsating red orb, commanded its remaining forces to stop her. Woohyun yelled that they just needed to reach him. The entire battle hinged on destroying the caster's orb. He prepared to use his newly leveled position transfer too. Just as Renee was about to strike, a massive, heavily armored Death Knight intercepted her, blocking her path. Woohyun cursed. It wasn't going to be that easy. He shouted Renee's name in warning as she cried out, momentarily overwhelmed. She was flung back by the powerful undead, landing hard amongst the lesser skeletons. Seeing his opening while the lich was focused on Renee, Woohyun activated Position Transfer 2, designating his own dagger and the lich's orb. He focused his intent. The new ability wasn't just about swapping himself. It allowed swapping objects. He executed the exchange. The lich looked down in confusion as its precious orb vanished, replaced by Woohyun's simple dagger floating in its skeletal hand. Woohyun reappeared near Renee, now holding the glowing red orb. "Nice catch," he quipped, channeling his inner quarterback. The lich shrieked in denial as Woohyun crushed the orb. Deprived of its power source, the lich crumbled instantly, and all the remaining undead collapsed into inert piles of bone and dust. Woohyun cheered, telling Renee they did it. She simply nodded. A quiet "thank you" escaped the lich's fading essence. Woohyun felt a twinge of guilt. Acknowledging the tragedy here was a result of his writing. He offered a silent prayer for the souls to find peace. Renee called his name. He turned, asking if there was something left. She confirmed it was time for the reward. A large, ornate treasure chest materialized from the dissipating magic, glowing invitingly. Finally, an item he desperately needed. The treasure chest revealed its contents: the Fong of Darkness dagger and the eternal full moon ring. Woohyun picked up the dagger, feeling its dark energy pulse. He realized this weapon would perfectly complement his darkness trait, maximizing its potential. Examining the ring next, he deemed it useful but not essential for himself. He decided to offer the ring to Renee, claiming the dagger for himself. Renee considered for a moment before agreeing. Woohyun then took her hand to place the ring on her finger. As he slid the simple artifact onto her hand, Renee's face flushed bright red, her eyes wide with shock. She quickly snatched her hand back, looking flustered. Woohyun was baffled by her reaction, wondering if putting a ring on someone held a special significance for demons, perhaps akin to some ancient, awkward pickup line he wasn't aware of. He asked her how the ring felt. Renee, still blushing but regaining composure, tested the ring's mana sensitivity enhancement. She admitted it was amazing, clearly impressed by its power. Woo Hyun expressed his gladness that she liked it. Since he handled the boss, Woo Hyun cheerfully claimed the pile of gold coins left behind, scooping them up with a greedy grin. Noticing Renee's stare, he quickly added he would distribute it evenly, down to the last coin, of course. After clearing the domain, they returned to the mansion, making it back before dinner. Woo Hyun spent the next month running errands for Renee and diligently training his mana. His status showed significant progress. His race now half-demon, alignment chaotic with traits including interest, focus, killing intent, darkness, mana manipulation, and the Eye of Superbia. His mana pool had grown substantially to 1297. He felt satisfied, reaching nearly 1300 mana, placing him around the middle ranks within the demon realm. A few days later, Crete summoned both him and Renee. The Patriarch announced it was time for them to enter Sidon Academy. The moment had finally arrived. They were to leave for the capital today for the academy entrance. Crete asked if their preparations were complete, which both confirmed. He dismissed them curtly, stating he didn't believe in farewells. Renee remained silent, bowing slightly before turning to leave. Woo Hyun informed Crete he would head out with the miss. Crete stopped him, calling his name, and wished him well, a rare hint of something other than calculation in his voice. Woo Hyun affirmed he would do his best. Outside, a grand carriage awaited them, attended by servants. A butler announced their immediate departure. From a window, Crete watched them go. Woo Hyun noted the Patriarch's unexpected sentimentality, musing that perhaps even powerful demons cared about their children, despite claiming otherwise. Though worried about his future, Woo Hyun felt resolved. He would achieve his goals in Sidon. The carriage sped off, wheels churning along the road. Inside the carriage, Woo Hyun settled in. He noticed Renee hadn't spoken since they left, wondering if he'd somehow upset her. Renee glanced at him thoughtfully. Internally, she admitted that while initially suspicious, he seemed better than she first thought. Woo Hyun, feeling the silence, awkwardly commented on the nice weather. Renee continued her assessment. His words lacked weight, and he didn't seem particularly strong, questioning if he was truly a priest. She found herself staring. Then she mentally scolded herself for doubting him after witnessing him speak to the demon god. She had messed up, hadn't she? She shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the ring, her blush returning slightly. An eternal vow. That's what it meant in the demon realm when someone of the opposite gender placed a ring on your finger. He'd done it so casually. What kind of vow had he intended? She was intensely curious. Woo Hyun broke the silence again, asking if she was all right. He informed her they would arrive in about an hour, sooner than expected. Renee looked at him, seemingly processing her thoughts, before simply huffing and stating it was okay. When Woo Hyun asked again if he'd messed up, she curtly told him to be quiet. She was going to nap. Eventually, the carriage stopped. They had arrived. Stepping out, Woo Hyun took in the capital of the demon realm. He carried their luggage, observing the bustling city streets. It looked surprisingly medieval-esque, not vastly different from human cities, aside from the obvious physical distinctions like horns on many inhabitants. He also noticed tattoos marking the elite demons, similar to the one he now possessed on his neck. Renee impatiently told him to hurry up, and he quickly followed. He asked where they were headed. Renee explained the entrance exam was at noon in 2 days, and they needed to register beforehand. Woo Hyun suggested touring the capital until then, but Renee flatly refused. Her curtness continued to puzzle him. He started to ask if she might be, but she cut him off, stating they didn't have time and needed to register now. He recalled her supposed backstory of not leaving the house since her mother's death. He truly couldn't figure her out. They arrived at Sidon Academy, an incredibly imposing structure easily triple the size of any ordinary university. At the registration desk, a portly, monocled official briskly processed an applicant, telling them to return in 2 days before calling for the next person. Woo Hyun stepped forward, stating they were there to register for entry. The registrar glanced up, asking what they were, then did a double take, noting Woo Hyun didn't seem to be a full demon. His eyes bulged, and his face contorted in fury as he slammed his hand down. He shouted incredulously, questioning how a mere half-demon dared to apply. Woo Hyun sighed inwardly, sensing a very depressing, discrimination-filled future ahead. The registrar continued his tirade, spitting insults about rat bastards like Woo Hyun. Woo Hyun feigned ignorance about the commotion, just as the registrar finally noticed Renee standing beside him. Recognizing the distinctive horns of house bears, the registrar's demeanor shifted instantly, murmuring in awe about the presence of a child from a seven deadly sins house in this intake. He formally requested Renee state her house and identity. She complied, introducing herself, and then presenting Woo Hyun as her guard who would be admitted alongside her. The registrar scoffed, questioning the bear's family's lowered standards for employing a half-demon guard. Before he could continue, Renee's eyes flared with blue light, her aura surging as she warned him that she wouldn't stand by and watch him insult house bears further. Visibly intimidated, the registrar quickly stammered that Saidan didn't discriminate based on identity, conveniently forgetting his previous outburst. He hastily demanded Woo Hyun's house and identity. Woo Hyun calmly provided the fake name Adele from the non-existent house Pixie. With the registration finally complete, the official curtly told them to show up on exam day. Woo Hyun inwardly acknowledged the deep-seated hostility towards half-demons, a lingering consequence of the human-demon war. Though irritated, he told Renee they needed to find accommodations. They located a modest inn nearby, which Woo Hyun deemed clean enough. Renee wrinkled her nose, complaining about the old tavern, but Woo Hyun reminded her they were basically broke AF and couldn't be picky. The 10 gold coins Creed had provided were barely enough for a month, and given House Bear's poor financial state after the war, asking for more wasn't an option. He suggested they head inside. The innkeeper welcomed them with a creak of the door. Woo Hyun inquired about a room for 2 people for 2 days, and the innkeeper confirmed availability. When the innkeeper innocently asked if they would be sharing a room, Renee flushed bright red. Woo Hyun immediately requested separate rooms, which the innkeeper readily agreed to. The total cost came to 2 gold, including meals, a price Woo Hyun found reasonable after a quick mental calculation. Renee announced she was going up first and headed towards the stairs. Woo Hyun assured the innkeeper he'd bring the luggage up soon and politely wished Renee a good rest. She responded somewhat stiffly, wishing him the same. He reflected that this simple and must be a stark contrast to her life in a mansion, but figured she would adapt. With 2 days before the exam, he decided it was time to rest up. 2 days later, they stood before the imposing Saitan Academy building. A guard instructed the throng of applicants to head inside and follow instructions. Joining the crowd, Woo Hyun estimated there were at least 100 hopefuls. He noted the fervent desire among them to fight humans and reminded himself to be extremely careful about his identity being exposed. An announcement instructed everyone to present their ID and board. Woo Hyun wondered what they were meant to board. Inside, a massive, steam-belching magical train stood waiting at an indoor station. Woo Hyun admitted he hadn't expected a train. It was explained that multiple maze-like dimensional gates guarded Saidan, and only the train could navigate the path. He realized the enormous fortress they'd seen outside was just a part of the true Saidan complex, baffled by its sheer size. An announcement warned them to brace for impact as they would be arriving shortly. The train jolted, and Woo Hyun felt the magical transition. The train finally arrived at a grand, ornate station within Saitan proper. The magnificent machine hissed steam on the platform. Applicants were instructed to follow the guides to the auditorium where the exam would be held. They disembarked and joined the flow of students, passing through massive double doors. The auditorium inside was overwhelmingly huge. Woo Hyun observed the mostly young demons, scanning the crowd and wondering if heirs from the other 7 deadly sins houses were present. He spotted several figures in distinct outfits, clearly instructors, and briefly considered trying to make a good impression to ease his path. Suddenly, a voice declared that time was up. The enormous doors slammed shut with a resounding boom, and the bright hall plunged into an unnatural, magical darkness. Woo Hyun noted the abrupt shift from daytime, wondering what kind of exam awaited them. A commanding voice demanded silence. High above on a balcony, a single figure became illuminated. Headmaster Lucian, identifiable by her dragon-themed headpiece, extensive tattoos, and intensely piercing eyes. She welcomed the gathered brainless, idiotic fools to Saitan, cynically asking how many were eager to die this year. The sheer pressure emanating from her voice alone sent shivers down Wu Hyun's spine. Cutting off any further pleasantries, Lucian declared the small talk over, her powerful aura flaring. She announced the immediate start of the entrance exam, unleashing an immense wave of mental pressure that washed over the entire hall. Wu Hyun gasped, staggering under the assault, and shouted for Renee to focus on the exam. All around them, less resilient applicants cried out and collapsed. The instructors watched the scene impassively. One remarked on the headmaster's twisted taste, while another commented that talent meant nothing without mental strength. This initial stage, personally overseen by Lucian, was the mental endurance test, designed to verify if applicants could withstand interrogation and keep secrets if captured by humans. After 5 grueling minutes, one instructor observed that almost no one was left standing. Lucian then declared that was enough for now. An instructor sighed with disappointment, noting only 8 remained upright despite the large turnout. However, another instructor pointed out that roughly 40% lasting 5 minutes was a significant improvement compared to the last intake, offering some relief. They noted that the rumors about this intake, including heirs from all 7 houses, appeared to be true, observing the distinct figures among the survivors. One instructor confirmed this, but then paused, his gaze locking onto Wu Hyun. He pointed out the kid who didn't seem to belong to any of the 7 deadly sins houses. The instructors acknowledged his presence, impressed that he had endured for nearly 10 minutes without the expected lineage boost. Nevertheless, they predicted he wouldn't last much longer. Just then, Wu Hyun visibly faltered, trembling under the strain. Suddenly, the instructor's eyes widened, sensing something was off. A violent eruption of dangerous, dark energy burst forth from Wu Hyun. Both instructors stared in shock, while Headmaster Lucian observed with newfound interest. The swirling black energy intensified around Wu Hyun, radiating danger. The lead instructor's face hardened, drawing his sword as he grimly decided this unknown, dangerous element needed to be eliminated immediately. This sudden, dangerous surge instantly drew the attention of every instructor present. The lead instructor reacted instinctively, his hand gripping his sword hilt. Even Headmaster Lucian watched from her balcony with renewed focus. The lead instructor felt a prickle of alarm, tensing under the combined weight of the headmaster's lingering pressure and this unexpected development. He cursed inwardly, feeling unnerved facing a mere applicant. His colleague subtly reassured him. Nearby, another applicant finally succumbed, collapsing to the floor. Wu Hyun gasped, feeling his sanity fraying under Lucian's intense mental assault. He knew he needed to find a way to endure or risk losing his mind. A desperate idea sparked. Perhaps his own killing intent could be enough to counteract the headmaster's overwhelming aura. Seeing no other option, he grit his teeth and unleashed it. A raw scream tore from him as crimson-black energy erupted outwards. Lucian noted his resilience, wondering aloud if she should increase the intensity further. Wu Hyun pushed back with everything he had, focusing his intent. His dark aura clashed violently against the headmaster's oppressive blue pressure. Lucian's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Wu Hyun finally gasped for air as his aura stabilized, pushing back the crushing weight. He breathed a sigh of relief. It had actually worked, and the pressure felt much more manageable now. He immediately looked around, checking on Renee's condition. As expected, she was holding out well, standing firm against the mental onslaught. He also spotted the other prominent figures: Baltan, heir of envy; Prone, heir of lust; Samuel, heir of gluttony; and the pair representing sloth and greed, Aaron and Goer. Wu Hyun reflected grimly that while he had written some of these characters with affection, They were all ultimately fated to be killed by the main character's party in his novel. 6 of them, including Renee, were destined to fall. His thoughts were interrupted as his gaze fell upon another figure standing among the survivors. He noticed the distinctive long, white hair, the piercing red eyes, and the subtle brown crown of thorns. There was no mistaking her identity. She was the demonic realm's greatest future villain, Diana, the heir of wrath, the future demon lord. Just as this shocking realization hit him, Lucian declared the end of the first exam. Wu Hyun was bewildered. Traditionally, the Demon King came from Wrath's lineage, so Diana should have already held that title, not be here as an applicant. He questioned if some major event, unknown to him, had transpired, allowing a successor to the Demon Lord to participate in the Saitan entrance exam. As the pressure lifted, the hall filled with the groans and complaints of the failed applicants. One particularly arrogant student confronted the lead instructor, demanding special treatment and boasting about his father. The instructor swiftly shut him down, grabbing his face forcefully, stating bluntly he couldn't care less about his father's identity. He threw the student to the ground, warning him not to make him repeat himself. The instructor then loudly proclaimed that anyone unable to endure for 5 minutes was not needed at Saitan and declared all failures dismissed. He ordered the massive doors to be closed. Wu Yun observed the ruthless efficiency, thankful he had managed to pass. He finally placed the headmaster, recognizing Lucian from his own novel's lore. Despite her somewhat cute appearance, she was one of the most powerful beings in the demonic realm. He felt fortunate to have passed, but knew the second exam would be even tougher, requiring more caution. Murmurs spread through the remaining successful applicants, many recognizing Renee and calling her Amazon, the famed combat genius of the Bears family. Wu Hyun noted her apparent popularity. It made sense, he supposed, as the heirs of the 7 deadly sins had all withstood the headmaster's power. He couldn't help but feel a little overlooked, wondering why no one paid him any attention despite his own success. Haters gonna hate, he guessed. Renee walked over, acknowledging that Adele had passed as well, to which he confirmed. He felt satisfied, figuring he'd at least left an impression, likely an unsettling one, on the instructors and headmaster. The lead instructor called for attention. He introduced himself formally as Ares, the instructor in charge of teaching them. Wu Hyun privately thought the guy looked like he might carry a sashimi knife in his coat pocket. Ares congratulated them on passing the mental strength test, explaining its purpose was to gauge their ability to maintain sanity under duress, simulating potential torture by humans. He announced that the 8 applicants who held out until the very end would receive extra points, and, if they performed well in the second exam, access to the weaponry. Wu Hyun was ecstatic. Access to the weaponry was a huge boon, making him incredibly glad he endured. He could practically feel the waves of envy rolling off the other students. Ares moved on, preparing to explain the second exam. He stated it would involve demonstrating their abilities, specifically talents and weapons useful against humans. Another student noted that class assignments might depend on this exam's results. Wu Hyun understood this meant placement based on skills and wondered what kind of human opponent they would face. Ares dramatically announced their assignment for the second exam, including the human they would face. With a snap of his fingers, a summoning light flared. A sigil depicting a tiger appeared, and a familiar long sword materialized from the light. Wu Hyun's eyes widened in shock and panic. He recognized that sword. It belonged to the strongest hero among the heads of the 6 great human families, Ninal Cell. The summoned figure of Ninal Cell solidified, radiating an intense, icy blue aura. Wu Hyun reeled back, utterly bewildered by the appearance of this specific human, wondering why the legendary sword saint was part of their entrance exam. It felt incredibly random. Renee, noticing his reaction, asked Adele if he knew the summoned person. Wu Hyun confirmed that he did, recognizing the man instantly. He identified him as Ninal Cell, the head of House Ninal, a figure intrinsically linked to the protagonist of Wu Hyun's original story through a predetermined bloodline. The connection was profound. Ninal Cell was the protagonist's father, the renowned sword saint, who had forged his powerful house through sheer talent alone. Whispers erupted among the other applicants. They too recognized the legendary warrior, panically questioning if the academy was trying to call them right from the start. Woohyun noted their recognition wasn't surprising, given Ninal's history of defeating numerous demon houses. Instructor Ares addressed the mounting fear, clarifying that they weren't expected to face the Sword Saint's full might. The summoned Ninal would only utilize 10% of his true strength. Renee quietly observed that even at full power, they would stand no chance. Woohyun mused if 10% might be too easy, but Renee wisely countered that even a nerfed monster remained a monster. He considered that just 10% of the Sword Saint's power was reputedly enough to level a city, making him wonder how this brutal intake could possibly pass such a test. He briefly wished he could consult the information scroll for the passing criteria, but dismissed the idea due to their limited funds and the scroll's restricted usage. Ares then announced the test format. Acknowledging their inability to face Ninal individually, they would be divided into teams of 4. To ensure fairness, the top 8 performers from the first test, the 7 deadly sins, Ares, and Woohyun, would be placed in separate locations, while the remaining applicants would be grouped randomly. Woohyun realized this meant he was grouped with the elite, Riley thinking he'd basically been carried into the top tier. He noticed the admiring, almost starstruck gazes directed at Renee, contrasted sharply by the resentful stares aimed his way, likely from those thinking he'd gotten lucky. He was getting used to being the odd one out. Renee tapped his shoulder unexpectedly. She advised him simply to get a pass and return safely. Woohyun returned the sentiment, wishing her success as well. Ares began calling out the group assignments. Woohyun was assigned as leader of Group 33, paired with Kina, Chris, and Sanchez. He didn't recognize his teammates' names, assuming they were likely minor characters, essentially extras from his novel. 3 figures approached: a bright-eyed, silver-haired boy, a cheerful blonde girl, and a stern-looking young man with dark hair. Woohyun introduced himself politely. The girl, Kina, introduced herself, and the silver-haired boy, Chris. Chris then indicated the sullen one, Sanchez, who merely scoffed. Sanchez immediately voiced his displeasure, openly declaring it a disgrace to his house to have a half-demon team leader. Woohyun sighed inwardly, already tired of being judged by nobodies who seemed to think they were hot stuff. Ignoring the insult, he rallied the team, suggesting they do their best anyway. Kina and Chris readily agreed. Woohyun took charge, stating they needed to assign roles and asking them to share their abilities, starting with Chris. Chris explained his ability was mana transformation, demonstrating how he could shape a triangular prism of mana into armor or a sword. While versatile, he admitted it lacked high killing power. Woohyun acknowledged its usefulness. Finding the ability acceptable, Woohyun turned to Kina. Kina admitted she was a support type, specializing in buffs. She demonstrated by praying to the demon god, chanting Zeorcus, enveloping herself in golden light to enhance allies' speed. Panting slightly, she asked Woohyun if he felt the effect. He hesitantly confirmed he thought so, prompting a pout from Kina, who called him mean. Woohyun quickly backtracked, claiming he was joking. Privately, he found the buff incredibly weak, barely noticeable, and wondered how she'd survived Lucian's mental assault. Finally, he addressed Sanchez. Sanchez announced his ability and demonstrated his skin transforming into a tough, rock-like carapace. Woohyun identified it as a hardening ability, perfect for a tank. Sanchez, fully transformed, aggressively pointed at Woohyun, demanding to know his ability. Woohyun casually flipped a small object. In the next instant, he vanished in a flash of blue light, reappearing directly behind the startled Sanchez, who looked utterly confused. Leaning close, Woohyun revealed his ability was teleportation, confirming it as Sanchez struggled to process the sudden movement. Kina and Chris were immediately impressed, exclaiming how amazing teleportation was. Woohyun thanked them, inwardly smirking. He decided, however, to keep the full extent and mechanics of his position transfer to ability a secret for now, anticipating potential future complications. He then assigned positions. Chris and Sanchez up front as defenders, Kina supporting from the rear, and himself in the center coordinating. Kina agreed readily, while Sanchez merely grunted, offering no argument. Wu Hyun felt a sense of anticipation. The second test was about to begin. Aries called for Group 1 to step forward. Wu Hyun observed their determined expressions, impressed by their fire, even when facing the Sword Saint. The summoned Ninel raised his glowing sword, then unleashed a blindingly fast attack that filled the air with cutting energy. Wu Hyun and Sanchez watched, stunned. The first group was instantly overwhelmed, crying out as they were struck down. Wu Hyun couldn't even track the Sword Saint's movements, shocked that this was supposedly only 10% of his power. Aries impassively called for Group 2. They too were swiftly defeated, followed by Group 3. Kina and Chris flinched nervously beside Wu Hyun as the massacre continued. When Group 4 was called, two members immediately lost their nerve, crying out that it was pointless and they would definitely lose. Aries gave them a cold stare. He permitted the two quitters to skip the test, then asked if the remaining pair would proceed. The final two members of Group 4, though terrified, agreed to try. Watching them step forward, Wu Hyun had an epiphany. Perhaps the true qualification wasn't surviving the attack, but having the courage to face it despite the overwhelming odds. Chris questioned if the quitters were exempt from the test. Wu Hyun confirmed they were. Instructor Aries signaled the remaining two members of Group 4 to begin their attempt against the waiting Sword Saint. Wu Hyun knew two people stood no chance against Cell, but decided to observe how things unfolded. As expected, Ninel attacked instantly, his strike a blur of light that effortlessly dispatched the pair. Wu Hyun grimaced. If that had been real sword aura, they would have been sliced in two. Chris nervously wondered aloud if they could truly defeat such a monster, prompting a scoff from Sanchez, who questioned his fear of a mere human. Wu Hyun, however, could practically hear Sanchez's knees knocking together despite the bravado. The test continued its brutal pace. Group 5 was called and swiftly eliminated. By the time Group 9 was called, the floor was littered with defeated applicants. Group 10 wisely chose to forfeit immediately. Group after group faced the Sword Saint, including Group 20, which Wu Hyun noted contained Renee. When Group 30 finally stepped up, Wu Hyun tallied that 5 teams had already forfeited, and not a single group had managed to land even a meaningful strike on Ninel. Wu Hyun analyzed the situation, a seemingly undefeatable opponent, yet applicants were allowed to forfeit midway. He watched as a member of Group 30 managed to block Ninel's initial strike. Chris exclaimed in surprise. Wu Hyun noted that the later groups seemed to last longer, their skills evidently better than the earlier ones. This observation solidified his earlier theory. He now understood the true condition for passing the second test. Sanchez nervously reminded everyone their turn was approaching soon, while Kina admitted she was shaking. Wu Hyun calmly stated he had figured out how to pass, piquing Sanchez's curiosity. He explained that the real test wasn't about winning, but about demonstrating resolve. They needed to get back up and keep fighting, no matter how overwhelming the force. The instructor's handling of quitters and Ninel's impossible strength confirmed it. He paused, then proposed a different approach. Just then, Aries called for Group 33. Wu Hyun boldly suggested they aim higher. Instead of just enduring, they should try to actually defeat the Sword Saint, confidently stating their combined power could achieve it. Sanchez looked stunned, but Chris and Kina surprisingly agreed, deciding it didn't matter if they lost. They'd try anyway. Wu Hyun felt a surge of determination. Half demon or not, wielding Adele's talent, he believed victory was possible. He declared they would begin. Chris immediately deployed his mana barrier. Sanchez activated his hardening, and Kina began her supportive chant. Wu Hyun acknowledged a disadvantage. Unlike the main character of his novel, he hadn't written extensive details about Ninel Cell's specific abilities. Unsure of the perfect opening move, he instructed his team to hold their positions and fight calmly. Chris affirmed readily, while Sanchez just grunted his acknowledgement. Ninal Cell's aura flared as he prepared his attack. Wu Hyun shouted a warning. The Sword Saint lunged, his blade flashing. Chris's mana shield shattered like glass upon impact. The force sent Chris flying backward. Wu Hyun immediately ordered Kina to protect him. Kina reacted instantly, rushing to soften Chris's landing. Wu Hyun yelled for Sanchez to hold the line. Ninal's blade descended again. Sanchez roared as the blow connected, his rock-like skin cracking under the immense force. Miraculously, he withstood the hit. Nice! Wu Hyun shouted encouragement. In the brief moment before Ninal's follow-up strike, Wu Hyun saw a potential opening. However, it felt too deliberate, too obvious. His instinct screamed trap. He wondered if the Summoned Sword Saint possessed some advanced AI, learning and adapting, maybe having watched too many fail videos online. Was he being baited? He yelled for the team to prepare for the second attack and hold their positions. Chris desperately tried reinforcing his damage barrier. Wu Hyun saw Chris was reaching his limit, and the cracks in Sanchez's hardened arms were worsening. This wasn't good. A single glancing blow had caused significant damage. He urged them mentally to hold on just a little longer. Ninal raised his sword once more. Wu Hyun braced himself. The second attack struck with blinding speed. Sanchez bellowed in pain, noting the attack felt even stronger this time. He furiously demanded action from Wu Hyun, yelling they would all die if they just kept defending. Wu Hyun countered they just needed to endure a bit longer. Sanchez cursed him, pointing out they were the only team so far to block the second attack, and questioning if Ninal would simply repeat the pattern. Ninal paused, lowering his sword slightly, seemingly observing them. He settled back into a ready stance. Seeing his chance, Wu Hyun's eyes snapped open. Kina rushed to Chris, who was groaning on the floor. Wu Hyun quickly checked on him. He told Chris to trust him one more time, receiving a weak nod in return. Sanchez yelled at Wu Hyun, demanding to know his plan and warning him Ninal was about to attack again. Wu Hyun assured Sanchez he had a plan. Eyes glowing with red energy, he internally solidified his resolve. He would plunge his dagger into Ninal's throat. Kina and Chris watched nervously. Ninal gathered his power. Sanchez shouted a warning as the Sword Saint prepared to move. Wu Hyun suddenly told Sanchez he'd have to endure the next hit without Chris's barrier, cutting off his bewildered protest. Ninal launched forward. Sanchez braced, but his hardened form shattered completely upon impact, sending him reeling. The instant Sanchez was hit, Wu Hyun activated Position Transfer 2. Move. He now stood directly in front of Ninal's cell. He immediately designated Ninal's sword with Position Transfer 2. Designate, and lunged forward, Fong of Darkness flashing. Ninal watched his approach. Wu Hyun, fueled by Adele's power, snarled Ninal's name, ready to kill. Wu Hyun lunged forward, dagger aimed true. Instructor Ares watched, startled by the sudden turn of events, as was Renee, her eyes wide with surprise. But just as the Fong of Darkness was about to connect, Ninal reacted with impossible speed, twisting and striking Wu Hyun midair. The blow sent Wu Hyun crashing down hard, blood splattering onto the pristine floor. He coughed, tasting iron, cursing the Sword Saint's speed and realizing he had to endure just one more hit. Pushing through the pain, Wu Hyun activated his trait, Darkness. Purple-black energy erupted, instantly enveloping the area around him and Ninal in a suffocating void. Wu Hyun gritted his teeth. His attempt to swap places with the sword using position transfer had failed, likely due to the artifact's power, but at least he had trapped Ninal within his darkness domain, thanks partially to Chris's earlier, now shattered barrier absorbing some initial impact. Inside the pitch-black space, devoid of light, Ninal stood momentarily disoriented, unable to see. This, however, was Wu Hyun's turf. He gripped the Fong of Darkness, knowing that within this absolute shadow, the dagger was stronger than any other weapon. He resolved to defeat the Sword Saint with everything he had. Ninal sensed the shift in the darkness, turning towards a coalescing shadow that rapidly took form. The Sword Saint struck preemptively, his fist approaching him. Wu Hyun staggered back, acknowledging internally that this guy was a total monster, even at only 10%. He squared up again within the swirling darkness, a bloody smirk touching his lips. The Fong of Darkness pulsed with power, and ethereal dark portals opened around Ninel. Wu Hyun declared that this time, the Sword Saint was the one who had been lured in. Copies of the Fong of Darkness emerged from the portals surrounding Ninel. Wu Hyun unleashed his technique, Fong of Darkness, Black Blade Rain. A torrential storm of dark energy blades slammed into Ninel from all directions. Outside the swirling sphere of darkness, Chris and Kina watched anxiously, wondering what hell was breaking loose inside. Ares observed calmly, judging the confrontation to be nearly over. The darkness began to dissipate. Wu Hyun stepped out, breathing heavily, leaving the figure of Ninel Cell lying motionless on the floor. The remaining applicants stared in stunned silence. The vast hall was quiet save for the lingering wisps of dark energy. A wide grin spread across Wu Hyun's face. He did it. Another nearby applicant, a blond boy, excitedly remarked how fun that was. Kina and Chris rushed over, relieved and amazed. Chris gushed about how amazing that was, asking how Wu Hyun managed it. Wu Hyun modestly credited their teamwork. Kina asked about Sanchez. She reported he was in shock but being tended to by the instructors. Wu Hyun expressed his relief, sheathing his dagger. He then turned back to the fallen form of Ninel, suggesting they finish this. Chris and Kina looked confused, asking if it wasn't already over. Suddenly, Ninel's foot twitched. Wu Hyun immediately knelt beside the down Sword Saint, explaining with a grim smile that one always needed to make sure the enemy was really dead. Rule number 2, double tap. Instructor Ares watched with a stern, unreadable expression. Nearby, prone, the heir of lust, observed with an amused smirk. Lounging with her attendants, she commented that for a half-blood, Wu Hyun wasn't half bad. One of her fawning attendants quickly added that he was nothing special compared to her, which Prone affirmed, of course. She added dismissively that his inferior birth would always show through, calling him stupid and vulgar. Suddenly, Prone flinched as an intense, cold aura flared nearby. She looked up, startled, wondering who it was. Her eyes widened as she recognized the bear's horns and the chilling glare directed squarely at her. She questioned why Renee was looking at her like that, feeling genuinely intimidated by the focused hostility. Her attendants immediately noted the battle of wills commencing between the two heirs, wondering aloud who would win. They confidently declared from the obvious victor, suggesting Renee wouldn't even make a decent snack, though Prone quickly shushed them, perhaps sensing Renee wasn't entirely weak. Wu Hyun turned, noticing the escalating tension between the two women. He frowned, wondering why Renee was suddenly radiating such intense bloodlust. Just then, Ares called out his name, Pixie Adele. Wu Hyun approached the instructor, asking what he wanted. Ares looked down at him, asking pointedly if Wu Hyun was really asking because he didn't know. Wu Hyun played dumb, confirming he was indeed asking. Ares simply stated that he would be watching Wu Hyun from now on, then turned and walked away. Wu Hyun sighed, slightly disappointed he didn't get praised, and made a mental note to keep an eye on Renee's brewing conflict. The silent standoff between Renee and Prone continued, their respective auras crackling. Other students watched the spectacle with fascination. Wu Hyun observed the girl opposite Renee, wondering about her identity. He noted her blue eyes, long white hair, and the single oni horn on her forehead. An applicant nearby identified her as Laurel Fron from the House of Lust. Wu Hyun questioned why she was picking a fight with Renee now, frustrated that his focus on the human world plot left him clueless about demon realm politics. Laurel Fron smirked condescendingly, then her attention shifted. Her gaze landed on Wu Hyun, and she called out imperiously, "Hey, half-blood!" Wu Hyun paused, confused why she was suddenly addressing him. Laurel pointed directly at him, a predatory glint in her eyes, and issued a stunning command, "Become my slave." Before Wu Hyun could react, Renee exploded, her eyes blazing with blue lightning as he roared her name. She launched herself into the air, soaring directly towards Laurel Fawn with killing intent. Renee lunged at Laurel Fawn, her sword drawn and crackling with blue energy. Laurel recoiled in shock, questioning if Renee was crazy. Before blades could clash, Instructor Ares intervened forcefully, his voice booming as he ordered them to stop. He reminded them sharply that unnecessary quarrels within sight and were forbidden, instructing them to resolve personal issues outside the academy grounds. Woo Hyun breathed a sigh of relief as Ares successfully blocked the escalating fight, glad that a full-blown brawl between two heirs was avoided before the entrance ceremony even began. Laurel huffed indignantly, while Renee, after a moment, sheathed her sword with a dismissive glance, muttering about Laurel being messed up. Woo Hyun approached Renee, asking if she was all right. She turned to him, her expression softening slightly as she reminded him that his group was up next and he should prepare. He looked puzzled. Unexpectedly, Renee reached out with a handkerchief, gently wiping away the blood from the corner of his mouth. She simply stated he did a good job. Laurel watched the exchange, aghast, sputtering questions about their relationship and accusing Renee of dating a half-demon. Woo Hyun, meanwhile, felt a small sense of satisfaction at the improved treatment now that he'd passed, offering Renee his thanks. Renee fixed him with a knowing look, suggesting he had hidden his strength deliberately to appear weaker. Before Woo Hyun could respond, Ares called for the next group, Group 34. Renee told him she needed to go, but assured him she wouldn't tell anyone about his hidden power, then walked away. Woo Hyun watched her leave, perplexed. He'd used all his strength, questioning if he really looked that weak, guessing she still assumed he was merely a family priest. Suddenly, Laurel Front called out, demanding his name. Confirming she meant him, Woo Hyun identified himself as Adele. Laurel considered the name, deeming it not bad, before asking why he hadn't answered her call earlier. Her expression turned sultry as she reminded him he had interrupted her when she was about to make her offer. Flaring her pink aura, she demanded he leave that bear's skank and serve her instead, promising to show him her irrefutable appeal and steal him away, figuratively flattening Renee's nose in the process. Woo Hyun politely declined, stating his Mrs. Turn was up and perhaps another time. Laurel looked utterly flabbergasted, her charm apparently having zero effect, sputtering in disbelief. Woo Hyun inwardly chuckled, turning his attention away, wondering if he'd finally get to see Renee's full power while Laurel fumed about being ignored in the background. He watched as Renee stepped forward with her randomly assigned group. She faced the summoned sword saint, Ninal Cell, her blue aura flaring intensely. Woo Hyun felt the pressure of the standoff, realizing Renee was even more incredible than he initially thought. Renee took a single step forward. She walked calmly towards Ninal Cell, her team trailing behind her. Diana, the heir of wrath, watched with interest. The blonde applicant who had cheered earlier found Renee's nonchalance amusing. Woo Hyun, however, was confused, wondering why she was just walking up to the sword saint like that. The two powerful figures stood face to face, their auras pulsing. Ninal's eyes glowed, mirroring Renee's intense gaze. They remained motionless for a tense moment. Then, in a flash of movement too fast for most to follow, they clashed. Blue energy erupted as their swords met. Woo Hyun gasped, stunned by the speed and power. When the light faded, Ninal Cell crumpled to the ground, defeated. Renee stood calmly, lowering her sword. The hall erupted in cheers. Ares observed, commenting dryly, "Not bad," as the crowd chanted Renee's name. Woo Hyun stared, disbelieving. Had she really won that easily? He realized then why Ninal hadn't attacked Renee as she approached. The Sword Saint summon form had likely already recognized her overwhelming power level. Laurel Front sniffed dismissively, lamenting she didn't get to see Renee ridiculed, but conceding she needed at least that much capability to stand up to her. Woo Hyun asked if she meant that all the 7 deadly since children gathered could defeat the real Sword Saint. Laurel scoffed, stating no being could currently defeat the true Ninal Cell. perhaps only the previous Demon King could have. She added that while the children might have skills surpassing this 10% version, she cut off Wu Hyun's thought, snapping defensively that anyone could see this pathetic fake was far weaker than the real Sword Saint's true power. The realization hit Wu Hyun. He had struggled against a vastly weakened imitation. Despite being the creator, he knew next to nothing about the true power scaling of the demonic realm. Yet, a thrill of anticipation pulsed within him. He decided to keep watching and see how things played out. Ares called for the next group, 35. Only the remaining heirs of the 7 deadly sins were left. Perhaps influenced by Renee's display, the other children also managed to defeat the summoned Sword Saint, some looking more triumphant than others. The fights were so one-sided, however, that Wu Hyun found it difficult to gauge the relative strengths between the heirs, although he already knew who the 2 strongest were based on his novel. Finally, Ares announced the conclusion of the entrance exams, ordering everyone to gather before the podium. He declared the results. Everyone who participated in the combat test passed, regardless of victory or defeat. Those who quit, however, failed, just as Wu Hyun had deduced. Ares congratulated the successful applicants, declaring them official members and trainees of Saidan. He immediately warned them not to get excited, promising a hellish road ahead so hard they'd want to quit. He instructed the passers to gather for the entrance ceremony in 2 days. However, he asked the 8 who defeated the Sword Saint, the 7 heirs, and Wu Hyun, to stay behind. Renee wondered why, prompting Wu Hyun to suggest it might be for the armory reward mentioned earlier. Ares confirmed this, stating they had all passed with flying colors and would be given the promised opportunity to enter the armory. Baltan, the heir of envy, immediately raised his hand, greedily asking if they could exit with tons of weapons, commenting on how useful Saitan weaponry sounded. Wu Hyun recognized the boundless greed and curiosity typical of Leekan Baltan, the son of envy, recalling his decent screen time in the novel. Ares flatly denied the request, stating only one weapon would be permitted to ensure focus. Cutting off further questions due to time constraints, Ares instructed them to follow him to the armory. He led them to a large, imposing set of doors, placing his hand upon a complex magical seal. The seal flared, and the massive doors glowed before slowly opening, revealing the entrance within. Ares informed them this was the perk Saidan offered, emphasizing that making the best or worst choice inside was entirely up to them. Wu Hyun looked at the elaborate armory entrance, wondering if it was truly just for weaponry, given its resemblance to a dungeon gate. Instructor Ares explained the entry procedure, one by one, in reverse order of their second exam performance, meaning the last to defeat the Sword Saint would go first. He added a warning that everyone would be inspected upon exiting. This meant Wu Hyun would be the last one in. Baltan, the heir of envy, cheered excitedly at being first, boasting he would pick the best item before Ares curtly told him to shut up and go inside. While waiting, Renee mentioned she planned to pick an artifact since she already had a weapon, asking Wu Hyun his plan. He replied he'd probably go for an artifact too. A sudden worry struck him. If everyone else chose artifacts, would anything decent be left by his turn? Ares impatiently told the next person to enter. Baltan emerged shortly after, proudly displaying a leafy circlet, looking quite pleased with himself. As expected, Wu Hyun observed the others also coming out with artifacts, making him reconsider if armor might be a better choice. Finally, Renee told Wu Hyun it was his turn. He noticed she had chosen a bracelet and asked about its features. She cryptically told him he'd find out inside, as items had descriptions, though she added with a smile that some items lacked them. Wu Hyun processed this information, items without descriptions. He doubted they were worthless given the care taken, figuring there must be something special about them. Ares confirmed he was the last one. Wu Hyun remained silent, though Ares, sensing his hesitation, told him to speak up, even if his intimidating expression suggested otherwise. Gathering his nerve, Wu Hyun asked what it meant when an item lacked a description. Ares explained it simply meant Saidan hadn't yet figured out what the item was, its owner, or its abilities. Precisely, Aries confirmed Wu Hyun's understanding. He elaborated that luck could grant amazing abilities, but misfortune could saddle one with a lifelong curse. With time running short, Aries urged him inside. Wu Hyun mused that his fortune now depended entirely on whether going last was a blessing or a curse. He stepped through the doors. The interior was surprisingly bright and tidy, unlike a typical dungeon hoard. He hoped nothing would jump out unexpectedly. Spotting a brightly lit archway further in, he deduced the main chamber lay beyond. He entered a vast room filled with artifacts displayed in glowing cases, marveling at the sight. He approached a unique-looking spear, reading its description, the Twin Fong Spear, containing serpent spirits that emerged when infused with mana. He dismissed it. The description sounded impressive, but the ability seemed mediocre, and he already had daggers. Next was the Starlight Crystal, an orb used by an astrologer that could illuminate surroundings with borrowed starlight. Incompatible with his dark element, he decided it was just a fancy torch and passed. He noticed an empty display case, wondering what had been there. Reading the plaque, he saw it was the Great Circlet of the Victor, granting exceptional recovery and stamina, bound to the owner until death. That greedy bastard Baltan had snagged a soul-bound item. Wu Hyun recalled removing such binding items in his novel, surprised to encounter one here. He scanned the room, realizing most of the obviously good artifacts were likely already taken. Spotting more empty cases labeled the Bind of the Python, Flag of the Demon General, and Insignia of the Fallen Noble. Frustration mounted. The 7 deadly sins heirs had picked the place clean. He considered the remaining mediocre armor and weapons, trying to decide his best option. His eyes fell on a broken sword in a case. Resigned, he thought he might have no choice, but worried about it being cursed. Then, inspiration struck. He could use that method. Reluctantly deciding to spend some of his saved gold, he pulled out the magic paper and pen, writing a request for information about the broken sword without a description. The paper responded, demanding payment for the information, an artifact above relic grade or 100 gold coins. Wu Hyun paused, then quickly wrote another query about the damaged scroll next to it. The cost was 50 gold coins. He grinned. The paper revealed the relative value by its price. He just needed to find the most expensive, unknown item. He located a row of 7 descriptionless items and began his appraisal, starting with an eagle-shaped black stone. The cost, 1 gold coin. Practically free. The paper revealed its ability, exchanging the owner's fortune with someone else's misfortune. Wu Hyun recoiled. That sounded suspiciously like a curse disguised as a blessing. On to the next one, he muttered quickly. The next few appraisals revealed costs of 100 gold and 50 gold. He sighed. None seemed particularly promising. With only 2 descriptionless items left, he hoped for better luck. He appraised a metal gauntlet. The paper declared it an artifact of at least mythical grade, requiring 300 gold coins for info. Mythical grade. Lucky. This could be better than anything the others took. He reached for it, deciding this was the one. As his hand touched the case, he froze. The display shimmered and vanished. A strange feeling washed over him, like being watched. He spotted the last item, a necklace. Wondering if Adele's senses were warning him, he quickly used the paper again, asking about the unnamed necklace. He felt a strange resonance. Suddenly, the paper flared with intense, turquoise energy. The response materialized. You must offer a god. Offer a god? Wu Hyun realized with a thrill. This had to be a legendary item. Wu Hyun felt a surge of relief, thinking he had dodged doom and found unexpected luck instead. The magic paper floated gently. His excitement quickly faded as he considered the condition, offering a god. He didn't exactly have a spare deity lying around, let alone the demon god. He looked closely at the perplexing necklace. Perhaps infusing mana would reveal something? He channeled his dark energy, but nothing happened. Frustration mounted as he sat, the paper stubbornly repeating its demand to offer a god, providing no other clues. He decided to try tricking the paper, asking which god was related to the necklace. The paper simply reiterated its previous message: offer a god. That approach failed miserably. Rephrasing seemed pointless. He'd likely get the same answer. He briefly considered giving up. But no, he couldn't quit now. Taking the necklace, his instincts screamed its value, far surpassing ordinary artifacts. He fastened it around his neck. Just to be certain, he summoned his status window. No changes appeared, just as he thought. He reasoned that since it required a god, no one else would likely be interested anyway, giving him time to figure it out later. Upon exiting the armory, Instructor Ares immediately noticed the item, asking what necklace Wuhyun had chosen. Wuhyun explained it was one without a description. Ares pressed, asking if he chose it without knowing its function and if Wuhyun did know something about it. Wuhyun maintained his ignorance, stating truthfully that he knew nothing at all. Ares gave him that familiar look of suspicion, making Wuhyun wonder why the instructor disliked him so much. Despite his skepticism, Ares stated he would believe Wuhyun, citing his duty as an instructor to trust his cadets. He then addressed the assembled heirs, advising them to cherish their chosen artifacts, as they might serve as an extra life in times of hardship. Wuhyun looked at the heirs, the future leaders of the demon world, knowing they would receive immense support. He couldn't help but wish for some of that backing himself, pondering his chances of truly making it at Saidan. Ares dismissed them, stating they would meet again at the entrance ceremony. Wuhyun turned to Renee, suggesting they head back to their dorm, and she agreed. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto Wuhyun's shoulder. It was Baltan, the heir of envy. Baltan offered a cheerful apology for his previous rudeness, introducing himself properly and complimenting Wuhyun's impressive fighting skills. Wuhyun returned the greeting, introducing himself as Adele and shaking Baltan's offered hand, finding the sudden friendliness odd but convenient. The handshake abruptly tightened with crushing force, Baltan's cheerful demeanor replaced by a menacing aura and a predatory grin. Wuhyun gritted his teeth, inwardly cursing the sudden aggression. He recalled Baltan's personality, dismissive of the weak, driven by intense jealousy and greed towards the strong. He was a battle-crazed lunatic who had nearly killed the novel's protagonist before sparing him simply for the promise of a better fight later. Baltan asked innocently what was wrong, noticing Wuhyun struggling. Wuhyun brushed it off, asking why Baltan approached him when stronger individuals were nearby. Discreetly, Wuhyun activated Position Transfer 2, setting Baltan's sword as the target. He placed his hand on Baltan's shoulder, feigning calmness, suggesting they stop since everyone was tired from the test. Wuhyun's hand trembled slightly from the effort of restraining Baltan's power. Baltan unexpectedly burst into laughter, finding Wuhyun's hidden resistance amusing. His aura exploded in flames as he declared Wuhyun strong and demanded they fight right there until one of them died. Wuhyun vehemently refused, stating he had no intention of fighting the psycho. Stop it! Renee's sharp voice cut through the tension. Her own blue aura flared intensely as she warned Baltan that if he wanted to fight her guard, he would have to fight her as well. She raised her sword, ready to intervene. Baltan, though loving a fight, conceded that taking on both of them was too much, especially before school started. With a menacing grin, he promised Wuhyun they would meet again. Wuhyun could only think Baltan was a complete psychopath, wanting a death match 1 second and avoiding injury the next. He also realized with unease that he hadn't even seen Baltan draw the sword now resting on his shoulder. Renee urged Wuhyun to leave, and he readily agreed. Despite the bizarre encounter, Wuhyun felt a growing anticipation for life at Saidan. The single day felt like several packed with events. Back at their lodging, Wuhyun woke the next morning, feeling unusually refreshed despite the previous day's trials. His body felt better, stronger. He flexed in the mirror, acknowledging his definite growth, asking himself, "Do you even lift, bro?" He decided to try on the Saidan uniform that had been conveniently delivered. He put it on, finding the material more comfortable than expected. Although students were restricted to wearing only the uniform for 3 years, at least it seemed practical. He wondered how Renee looked in hers and briefly considered going to see. He knocked on her door. When Renee answered, Woo Hyun identified himself, asking if she needed anything before they headed out. She simply told him to come in. As he entered, he saw Renee standing by the window in her Saitan uniform, bathed in sunlight. He paused, momentarily struck silent. He then complimented her, stating she looked beautiful. Renee became visibly flustered, clearing her throat and asking if he was going somewhere, her ears turning red. Woo Hyun found her embarrassment surprisingly cute. He mentioned taking advantage of the rare day off to walk around the city. He wished her a good rest and turned to leave. Wait, Renee called out, stopping him. Still blushing slightly, she asked if he had something he needed to do. Woo Hyun looked back, confused by her question. Renee looked down. Standing before Renee, Woo Hyun suddenly realized he had forgotten something crucial. Renee averted her gaze slightly, calling him guard, which instantly jogged his memory. He sheepishly admitted his excitement about having a day off alone made him forget his primary duty, guarding her. Renee, however, surprised him by offering to accompany him, asking him to wait while she changed out of her uniform. When she noticed him still standing there, she asked pointedly how long he intended to stare. Flustered, Woo Hyun quickly apologized and stepped outside her room to wait. He inwardly groaned, so much for his day off. Later, they walked through the bustling streets of the demon capital. Woo Hyun observed the lively, clean surroundings, finding it difficult to reconcile the scene with the fact that a devastating war had occurred just 10 years prior. While reconstruction was clearly still underway in the outer districts, the core of the capital seemed unscathed, suggesting the humans, despite winning the war, hadn't managed to fully conquer it. Renee called his name, pointing towards a nearby street food vendor grilling skewers over flames, proposing they eat there. The sizzling meat looked appetizing. Woo Hyun inquired about the skewers, and the vendor explained they were seasoned buck and vegetables. Curious if they were similar to chicken skewers, Woo Hyun ordered two. Renee took a bite first, her usual stoic expression softening as she savored the flavor. Woo Hyun tried his own, finding it quite tasty, and asked Renee if she liked it. She nodded enthusiastically, confirming it was delicious. Woo Hyun watched her, amused and surprised to see such unguarded enjoyment on her normally reserved face. They continued their stroll, passing a public square with a large fountain and meandering through the crowded streets. Woo Hyun cherished the moment, reflecting that it had been ages since he'd had a genuine break, suspecting this leisure time would be short-lived once Saitan life truly began. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed a massive statue dominating the square ahead. He paused, surprised by its presence, and wondered aloud who the imposing figure was. Renee seemed surprised by his ignorance, informing him it was a statue of the first Demon King. Woo Hyun looked closer, acknowledging the resemblance to Diana, the heir of wrath. Considering it a rare chance, he decided to get a better look. As he approached, the statue's stone eyes seemed to flare with an eerie turquoise light. Simultaneously, Woo Hyun felt a strange pulse from the necklace he wore. It began to glow with a similar light. A beam of energy seemed to leap from the necklace towards the statue, causing the artifact to throb against his chest. He looked down in shock, noticing one of the jewels set in the necklace had turned a dull gray. Renee, noticing him staring intently at the artifact, asked him what he was doing. Woo Hyun quickly tucked the necklace away, wondering if he'd imagined the light from the statue and the necklace changing color, yet certain he hadn't. He touched the necklace again, confirming the change. Renee gave him a questioning look, confirming she hadn't seen anything. Woo Hyun realized the significance. While even a magic paper gave only cryptic clues, he had stumbled upon a major lead in the most unexpected place. The necklace was undeniably connected to the first Demon King. Investigating this connection promised answers. Renee suggested they head back, and Woo Hyun readily agreed, his mind buzzing with newfound curiosity about the necklace's true nature. The following morning, their brief break over, they headed towards the Grand Saitan Academy building. Renee urged him to hurry, as the entrance ceremony was about to begin. Inside the auditorium, the headmaster and instructors were already seated on a stage, facing roughly 100 nervous new students. It looked like a standard, albeit imposing, entrance ceremony. A student beside Woo Hyun muttered disbelief that the small figure on the stage was the headmaster. Woo Hyun mentally corrected him. That little kid was the monster whose presence alone had overwhelmed them all during the exam. The student then remarked she was cute, making Woo Hyun scoff inwardly. Cute? With all those tattoos and a child's frame? He questioned the student's taste, thinking the headmaster looked more like a decorated garden gnome than cute. As if sensing his thoughts, the headmaster's piercing eyes flickered towards him. Woo Hyun flinched, quickly adjusting his thoughts to adorable, realizing with a jolt that she might actually be able to read minds. Instructor Aries called for silence, officially starting the ceremony. The headmaster delivered a somewhat unremarkable speech, concluding with a stern reminder that all students must abide by Saiten's rules. Following the speech, another instructor announced the oath-taking ceremony for the top cadet and the runner-up. As expected, Diana and Baltan proceeded towards the stage. Woo Hyun noted their ascension unsurprised and saw Renee remain completely impassive beside him. He figured her singular focus on avenging her mother left no room for petty competition. As for himself, he needed to ignore distractions and concentrate solely on his own survival and goals. Suddenly, he felt a sharp spike of killing intent directed at him. He looked up to see Baltan pointing directly at him from the stage with a smug grin. Annoyed by the persistent creep, Woo Hyun wondered if Baltan had installed a tracking app on him. He forced himself to remain calm and ignore the provocation. The instructor called the top cadet forward. Diana stepped up gracefully, radiating an aura of power. Woo Hyun acknowledged her strength. As the Demon King's daughter, blessed by the gods, she was truly formidable. He wondered if anyone could stand in her way now that she held the top spot. Diana began the oath, her voice resonating through the hall as she swore loyalty to Saitan and pledged to rebuild the demonic realm, wiping away past disgrace. Her words shifted the atmosphere, filling it with the palpable anger and resentment of demons who had suffered losses due to humans. Woo Hyun instinctively touched his neck, reminded of his hidden arson bloodline. The thought of discovery was horrifying. Eternal torture seemed the likely outcome. The ceremony concluded shortly after. Aries directed the cadets to check the bulletin boards at the back for their class assignments and proceed to their designated rooms. Woo Hyun gestured for Renee to follow, and she nodded. Students crowded around the boards displaying lists for classes A, B, and C. Woo Hyun scanned the lists and found his name under Class A. He then searched for Renee's name, spotting it under Class C. A small, relieved smile touched his lips. Separation wasn't so bad after all. He informed Renee she was in Class C, feigning slight disappointment, but she saw right through him, sharply telling him to wipe the smirk off his face. She reminded him sternly that he was still her guard and expected him to come immediately when summoned, before turning and walking away. Woo Hyun agreed politely, though mentally adding a firm nope. Nice, he thought, looking forward to some much-needed relaxation. His moment of relief was shattered as someone slammed into his shoulder from behind. Woo Hyun turned, startled. He found himself face to face with Samuel, the heir of gluttony, whose eyes glowed with green malice. Samuel snarled, asking Woo Hyun if he wanted to die, calling him a Cerberus-looking bastard. Woo Hyun instantly recognized the volatile heir. Woo Hyun recognized his aggressor, Samuel Varus, the heir of gluttony, recalled as being quite strong among the 7 deadly sins. Despite Samuel being the one who ran into him, he was picking a fight. Woo Hyun found the situation ridiculous, but decided to avoid conflict on the first day, offering an apology and claiming he wasn't paying attention. Samuel curtly told him to get lost, remarking that he was lucky it was the first day of school. Woo Hyun sighed in exasperation, wondering why all the children of the 7 deadly sins were so difficult, like dealing with 7 angry toddlers hyped up on sugar. He desperately hoped Baltan wasn't also assigned to Class A. Meanwhile, within the Seitan Academy building, a meeting of instructors was underway. Instructor Idea slammed her hand on the table, questioning if Aries refused to believe her assessment. She asserted that she was now a proper Seitan instructor. Aries argued back, insisting from his experience that the child named Adele was too dangerous and that he should handle the student himself. Idea protested vehemently, stating Adele was a student assigned to her, the Class A instructor, and Aries couldn't just walk all over her authority like that. Headmaster Lucian intervened sharply, ordering Instructor Idea to sit down. Idea slumped back in her chair, muttering petulantly about why it was always her getting reprimanded. Lucian then addressed Aries, asking his reason for wishing to switch the class he was in charge of. Aries stated his intention to handle trainee Adele personally, citing his battlefield experience against countless foes like Adele. He declared the boy a born murderer who could turn on his allies at any moment and thus needed to be restrained immediately. Another instructor questioned if Aries wasn't being overly cautious about a mere half-demon, pointing out Adele's significant weakness compared to the true heirs. Aries countered sternly, arguing that strength wasn't solely decided by raw power. Adele's ability to attempt bold actions and his calmness under pressure were comparable to the 7 deadly sins themselves. The other instructor fell silent. Aries reiterated his desire to handle Class A because Adele required caution. Idea abruptly stood up again, accusing Aries of ultimately just not trusting her. Lucian sighed, apologizing if Idea felt bad, but also asking when Aries would stop treating her like a child. Lucian silenced further argument with a wave of pressure, bringing the room to tense silence. She acknowledged Aries' concerns, but stated the classes were already assigned, and switching them now would cause more harm than good. Aries reluctantly conceded, but stressed it wouldn't hurt to be cautious. Lucian instructed Idea to pay special attention to Adele, which Idea acknowledged. With that, Lucian concluded the meeting, dismissing the instructors to greet their assigned classes. Woohyun located Classroom 1A and entered, only to immediately lament his rotten luck. Laurel from was already there, smirking at him. At least it wasn't Diana or Baltan, though Samuel was also present, seated nearby. Laurel approached Woohyun, asking if he had followed her, noting the random class assignments. With a flourish, she again offered him the wonderful privilege of becoming her slave. Before Woohyun could respond, Samuel addressed them both coolly, warning Laurel that if she didn't shut up, he would kill her. Laurel reacted with sputtering indignation, calling Samuel an adolescent brat and threatening to kill him first. Woohyun wondered if he'd managed to get along with this volatile group. The classroom door slammed open, revealing Instructor Idea standing in the doorway. She commented on the noise, asking if they were already fighting on the first day. Woohyun recognized the instructor from the meeting. Idea clapped her hands together, welcoming everyone. She introduced herself as Idea, the instructor for Class A, telling them to remember her name. She added that she was their senior, known by the moniker Legion of Calamity. Murmurs spread through the class as students recalled the famed Legion of Calamity who slaughtered tens of thousands of humans at Pollux River. One student corrected another, noting it was 30,000. Woohyun felt a slight sense of relief. Having such a powerful instructor might improve his survival chances. Instructor Idea declared her introduction finished and moved on to the class progression, writing hunting method on the blackboard. Samuel scoffed, stating they weren't hunting animals or beasts. A student raised their hand, asking what they would be hunting. Idea smiled, revealing their prey would be humans, one of the reasons they came to Seitan. Woohyun felt a jolt. Things were finally getting started. Idea clarified she would only teach hunting methods. Magic and weaponry would be covered by other instructors. She added she would also be in charge of basic stamina training, causing Woohyun to inwardly groan at his weakness. Concluding the introduction, Idea announced the start of their first class, instructing everyone to gather at the training grounds. Outside, Woohyun marveled at the vastness of the training area, easily 4 or 5 times the size of a typical field, wondering if it was meant for weapons or magic practice. Idea checked if everyone was present, and then instructed them to concentrate and focus their eyes on what she was about to create. Dark energy swirled around her, coalescing into a shadowy portal. Armored boots stepped out first, followed by numerous figures clad in human knight armor emerging from the portal. The students gasped in surprise. Idea chuckled, explaining they weren't real humans but illusions created with her magic, adding casually that she had also created the Sword Saint summon for the entrance exam. Woohyun realized she was a monster capable of creating a clone nearing a tenth of the Sword Saint's power. Saidam was formidable, but the thought of the Royal Academy, which far exceeded it, sent a chill down his spine. Idea explained the simple task, past the illusory humans and reach her on the other side. She then scanned the students, deciding who should start. Her eyes landed on Woohyun. Addressing him as Adele, she challenged him, suggesting he try stabbing her throat just like he did to the Sword Saint, a wide, unsettling grin spreading across her face. First instructor Ares, and now instructor Idea 2. Woohyun realized with some annoyance that he had caught the attention of another potentially troublesome instructor. He inquired if the exercise involved sparring directly with her. Idea clarified that hidden amongst the human illusions was their leader, the source of their mental fortitude. She explained the principle. Humans often crumbled like dominoes once their leader fell. But conversely, a strong leader meant strong soldiers. With a smile, she declared she would act as the human leader for this exercise. Woohyun understood immediately, recognizing the classic capture the chief strategy famously noted by Sun Tzu. Subduing the leader amidst a crowd of soldiers? A smirk touched his lips that seemed almost too easy. Idea seemed to read his thoughts, adding that actually subduing her would be impossible. So the objective was simplified. Merely landing a hand or weapon on her body would count as a pass. With a sharp command to begin, she signaled the start, and the illusory knights charged forward. Without hesitation, Woohyun activated position transfer 2. In an instant, he vanished from his spot and reappeared directly behind instructor Idea, the tip of his dagger hovering near her throat. He calmly asked if this constituted a pass. He marveled internally. The several dozen meters separating them were now a trivial distance for his improved skill. Compared to the mere couple of meters he could manage previously, this was significant progress, enough to potentially infiltrate an enemy base with ease. Idea let out a short laugh, remarking that she now understood why she was told to watch out for him. Woohyun remained puzzled by the cryptic comment. Declaring that he passed, Idea instructed him to return to his place. As he walked back, Woohyun pondered the instructor's focus on him. Was it hostility or simple curiosity? He couldn't pinpoint what about him provoked such reactions, hoping desperately they hadn't discovered his true identity. Idea then addressed the remaining students, reminding them of Woohyun's success and warning that failure would result in additional classes. A collective groan rose from the students. One eager cadet charged headfirst into the illusions, roaring for the humans to die. Woohyun observed that the students executed basic combat well, as expected of demons, though their opponents were merely powerless illusions. However, they only managed to take down a few before getting overwhelmed. He mused that if Idea actively controlled the illusions, it would be far harder. Indeed, the charging student was quickly surrounded and struck repeatedly. Woohyun winced sympathetically. That had a sting. Another student attempted a different tactic, try to leap over the formation with daggers drawn, only for illusory archers to suddenly appear and unleash a volley of arrows. Woohyun watched the predictable outcome in silence. Seeing the arrow-riddled student on the ground solidified his assessment. Position transfer was definitely overpowered, potentially putting him at the top of the class. Idea called for the next cadet. Samuel Varus stepped forward curtly. Woohyun watched with interest, curious to see if the gluttony heir's skills matched his abrasive personality. Samuel announced his start, green energy flaring around him. Wu Hyun observed intently. Samuel gathered the swirling green aura, then unleashed it in a massive, consuming vortex that tore through the training ground. The illusory humans vanished in the blink of an eye. Wu Hyun was genuinely impressed. So this was magic. He recognized it as Samuel's unique gluttony ability, a monstrous skill that devoured everything in its path. For now, Wu Hyun decided Samuel could have the top spot. Samuel sighed, seemingly unsatisfied despite the display. Idea calmly waved her hands, dismissing the remnants of his attack's energy. It was expected, Wu Hyun thought, that an instructor wouldn't be fazed by a cadet's attack. Idea complimented Samuel, admitting his attack blew away everything except her and was impressive enough to shock her for a moment. Then, with a bright smile, she declared him failed. Samuel looked utterly confused. Idea snapped her fingers, and instantly, the ranks of illusory knights reappeared, completely unharmed. She explained that unless the leader is killed, humans will always find replacements, no matter how many rank-and-file soldiers are eliminated. Wu Hyun noted the reformed ranks, estimating at least 200 soldiers had reappeared almost instantly. Idea acknowledged Samuel's magic was quite powerful for a first year. Samuel clenched his fist in frustration. Idea called for the next cadet, and Samuel clicked his tongue but walked back without further complaint. Wu Hyun noted his discontent, but also his acceptance of the result. Samuel shot Wu Hyun a glare as he passed, but Wu Hyun merely offered a slight, knowing smirk in return. Samuel's overconfidence in brute force was his downfall, Wu Hyun mused. Idea pointed out that if Samuel had focused on the target, like Adele did, he would have passed easily. "Ha, you have waited long," Laurelfront announced dramatically, striking a confident pose as it was finally her turn. Other students murmured, anticipating the performance of the Franc heir. Laurel addressed the illusions haughtily, demanding if lowly minions dared block her path. She let out her signature laugh, but then abruptly froze, her bravado faltering as she seemed unsure how to proceed. Students wondered why she wasn't moving. Laurel panicked internally, frantically wondering what she should do. Wu Hyun watched, unsurprised, just as expected. Fran, embodying lust, didn't fight directly but controlled minions like a queen bee, rendering her essentially useless on her own. Laurel desperately thought she needed to do something. Her eyes widened as she suddenly turned towards Wu Hyun. "Help me, my slave," she wailed dramatically. Wu Hyun could only respond with a blank, bewildered stare. Murmurs spread through the watching students as Laurel called Wu Hyun her slave. He inwardly questioned her sanity for saying such things while she desperately pleaded for him to hurry and help. Instructor Idea observed silently for a moment before gesturing towards Laurel. Immediately, the illusory knights converged on the panicked heir of lust. She let out a shriek as they easily overwhelmed her. Watching her get swatted down like a fly at a picnic, Wu Hyun wondered if she was incapable of casting buffs on herself. He dismissed the thought. Perhaps there was some specific reason for her apparent helplessness, even as she continued to wail for help. His attention shifted elsewhere. He noticed the pink-haired girl from earlier tending to another student who had been injured during the test, expressing thanks while she applied gentle, glowing magic to his knee. Wu Hyun recognized it instantly. Healing magic, a power supposedly exclusive to humans. The implication was clear. The girl must also be a half-demon, possessing a rare healing talent. He noted her presence, thinking he needed to find a way to connect with this potentially valuable ally, though he couldn't recall her name. Just as he considered approaching her, Instructor Idea stepped in, reminding Cadet Adele that Cadet Fran had been asking for his help. She suggested it would be nice if he helped Laurel walk now that the test was over. Wu Hyun internally cursed the instructor's terrible timing, seeing his chance to talk to the healer slip away. He walked over to the pathetic-looking Laurel, who was nursing a bump on her head, and gave her a sharp flick on the forehead, calling her useless Fran. He then unceremoniously hauled her to her feet, telling her to get up now that it was over. Laurel sputtered indignantly, accusing him of seeing everything. Woo Hyun smirked internally, admitting to himself she looked weaker than an actual slave, which only enraged her further as she accused him of mocking her. Instructor Idea clapped her hands, calling for the class to gather around. She stated that while she had expectations, the results were generally as anticipated, congratulating them on their first lesson. She emphasized the importance of experiencing such trials to understand their own standing, where they made mistakes and what their limits were. Knowing these things, she explained, allowed them to support one another and work together effectively in battle. Woo Hyun understood her point. Unlike human schools that sorted by ability, Saiten's random class placement made synergy crucial. Idea then addressed Woo Hyun directly as the only one who passed, stating she would look forward to his progress, her eyes gleaming with an unnerving intensity. Woo Hyun politely thanked her, vowing to work hard, though he felt the hostile stares of his classmates. Idea dismissed them to return to the classroom for the next lesson. He couldn't shake the feeling that her praise felt more like a threat. Dealing with Laurel's constant attempts to enslave him and the general hostility, he wondered if building his own faction here was even possible. The academy clock tower chimed, signaling the next period. After Instructor Idea's practical class, the rest of the lessons followed. Theoretical education was next. The instructor covered the history of the demonic realm and the weaknesses of humans, focusing on demon origins tracing back to the first Demon King. He also discussed anatomical similarities, prompting Woo Hyun to wryly note that getting hit there hurt demons just as much as humans. The instructor concluded by assigning memorization of the day's material for a quiz next time, warning them to study if they wished to avoid remedial lessons. Woo Hyun slumped onto his desk, feeling utterly defeated. Quizzes and memorization. It was just like school back on Earth. The first day wasn't even over, and he already felt drained. He sighed as other students chatted amongst themselves. Just like before, he had no friends. His gaze drifted, noticing the pink-haired healer girl sitting alone again. He resolved to talk to her this time and walked over to her desk. He hesitated for a moment, then introduced himself politely as Adele. As he spoke, he noticed the entire classroom had gone silent, all eyes turning towards them. The girl stammered a greeting back, clearly flustered by the sudden attention. Woo Hyun realized that two half-demons interacting was bound to draw scrutiny. Seeing her discomfort, he decided to save the rest of the conversation for later and bid her goodbye for now. Sighing, he decided to head to the restroom, maybe feed his loneliness some mana to keep it alive. Just as he reached the door, Samuel Varys stepped out, blocking his path. Woo Hyun groaned internally at the terrible timing. Samuel glared, asking Woo Hyun what he wanted. Woo Hyun smoothly replied he was just about to leave and gestured for Samuel to go ahead. Samuel scoffed, brushing past Woo Hyun and muttering about him being a nauseating, low-class creature. Woo Hyun stopped, a dark aura beginning to coalesce around him. He turned back slowly, asking if Samuel's family must be truly amazing. Samuel looked back, confused. Woo Hyun finished his thought with icy sarcasm. Amazing enough to produce walking, talking garbage like Samuel. Samuel's face contorted in rage, teeth bared, and he snarled that he would tear Woo Hyun to pieces, green energy erupting around him violently. Woo Hyun noted the pure hatred, different from Bolton's battle frenzy. If Samuel was going to be an obstacle, eliminating him now seemed logical. As Samuel's magic flared, he considered using magic himself, but figured blowing off Samuel's arm might attract too much unwanted attention. "Stop right there," a calm voice interrupted. The theoretical education instructor stood near his desk, seemingly having appeared out of nowhere. He smiled pleasantly, requesting they both take their seats as class was about to begin. Woo Hyun and Samuel stared, shocked by the instructor's sudden, silent arrival.